She was left to freeze on the offering stone.
Chained, shivering, mine by ancient law.
The humans called her a curse, a burden, bad luck in girl's skin. But I'm the Jarl of this mountain, and I know treasure when it screams my name through a blizzard. I drag her to my keep, wrap her in furs, feed her, ruin her. And when the day comes when they try to take her from me, I'll burn half the clan to the ground just to hear her purr.
Stay tuned for frost-orc size gap, human sacrifice turned royalty, a monster who feeds, bathes, and cares for his girl like a good orc daddy should.
Happily ever after guaranteed.
Chapter 1. Catherine. I stop feeling my toes somewhere past the tree line. By the time we reach the ridge, the biting wind has stolen the feeling from my fingers, my lips, and the tip of my nose. There is a mercy in the numbness. If I cannot feel the cold, I cannot feel the terror. I am a ghost walking to her own grave, and ghosts do not shiver. "Keep moving!" Alderman Gunther shouts over the howling gale, his voice immediately swallowed by the storm. He doesn't push me. He doesn't need to. The 2 village guards flanking me have grips of iron. They are massive men, bundled in thick bear pelts and heavy wool cloaks, their faces wrapped in scarves until only their eyes are visible. They are equipped to survive the frost marches. I am wearing a thin linen dress. It was my mother's summer dress, the only clean thing left in the house when they came for me. My boots are made of worn leather, paper thin against the elements. The snow is up to my knees, burying the hem of my skirt with every step, the ice crystals acting like thousands of tiny biting razors against my bare shins. The blizzard is a whiteout. I can no longer see the smoke of the chimneys in Mannheim behind us. When the guards had come to my house this morning, my father didn't fight. He didn't even argue. He just stood in the doorway, his face as blank as a sheet of parchment, and watched them drag me into the snow. Then he quietly shut the heavy oak door and slid the iron bolt home. I don't hate him for it. I am the town witch, the girl who sees death before it arrives, the cursed child who brings the bad weather, the sickness, the stillborn calves. I am a problem, and the village needed a solution. We reach the clearing at the very edge of the plateau. The wind up here is a physical blow, screaming in my ears, whipping my hair into a frenzy. The offering stone waits for us. It is a massive slab of black ironwood and granite, jutting out over a sheer drop into the white abyss of the valley below. The stone is ancient, older than our village, older than the alderman's grandfather. It is stained a dark, rusted brown from generations of blood and offerings. The dark elves used it centuries ago. Now we use it to appease the monsters of the peaks. "Put her down," the alderman orders, his breath pluming in the freezing air. The guards shove me. My knees hit the stone, sending a shockwave of agony up my frozen legs. The rock is so cold it feels like it's burning my skin. One of the guards grabs my right wrist. He slams it down against the iron ring embedded in the rock. Clank. The heavy iron shackle closes around my wrist. The metal bites deep, freezing instantly to my skin. He locks the left wrist next. I am splayed out, tethered to the cliff, facing the endless drop. I don't fight. I don't scream. I am too empty for that. Alderman Gunther steps forward. He looks down at me, his eyes flat and pragmatic beneath his fur hood. This is just bookkeeping to him. "The winter is hard, Catherine," he says, his tone conversational, as if we are discussing the harvest. "The food stores are rotting, the children are sick. We cannot survive a raid from Clan Eason. The warlord demands a tribute for safe passage." "Why me?" The words scrape out of my frozen throat. It's the first thing I've said all morning. Gunther doesn't flinch. "Because you are no longer of use to us. Your visions bring nothing but panic. You are bad luck, Catherine. You belong to the dark now. The orcs will eat the curse, and Mannheim will see the spring." He doesn't wait for a response. He turns his back on me. "May the gods have mercy on your soul," he calls out over his shoulder, a practiced, hollow line. The guards fall in step behind him. They don't look back. They trudge back into the storm, their heads down against the wind, desperate for the warmth of the fires I will never see again. Within seconds, the whiteout swallows their forms. The wind sweeps over their footprints, erasing the only path home. I am completely alone. I curl into a ball as best as the short chains will allow, tucking my chin into my chest to conserve whatever pathetic scrap of body heat I have left. The snow begins to coat my shoulders, matting my hair, freezing my eyelashes together. This is what it feels like to die. It's not violent. It's not the screaming, bloody mess of the visions that have plagued me since I was a child. The visions are always loud, fire, rending claws, screams. But this is just a slow fade, a quiet sinking into a deep, dark lake. My body stops shivering. That's the first sign. The violent shaking that racked my ribs just minutes ago ceases, replaced by a heavy, lethargic warmth. It's a trick of the mind. Hypothermia's final lie. I actually feel comfortable, sleepy. My heartbeat slows down. Thump, thump, thump. The blizzard's howl fades into a low, droning hum. The pain in my wrists vanishes. The white of the snow begins to turn grey, then black, creeping in at the edges of my vision. I close my eyes. I embrace the dark. Then the ground shakes. It is a subtle vibration at first, humming up through the black stone beneath my cheek. A rhythmic thud. Crunch. A heavy, deliberate step, too heavy for a man, too heavy for a deer. Crunch. My eyes snap open. The comfortable warmth of the hypothermia is instantly shattered by a spike of raw adrenaline. The wind suddenly shifts. The sterile, icy smell of the snow is overridden by something thick and overwhelming. Cedar, wood smoke, iron. And beneath it all, a musky, primal scent. The scent of a predator. Crunch. A shadow towers over me. It is massive, blotting out the swirling white of the storm. I tilt my head back, my neck stiff with frost, looking up, up, up. A monster stands over me. He is wearing a massive cloak of white wolf fur, the pelts so thick they make his already gargantuan frame look like a mountain. Beneath the fur, I see glimpses of heavy blackened steel and scarred grey leather armour. His skin is the colour of a bruised storm cloud, a deep slate grey that seems to absorb the light. Thick, sharp tusks jut from his lower lip, framing a mouth set in a grim, violent line. It is a frost-orc, a warlord of the high peaks. He is at least 7 feet tall, his shoulders broad enough to block the gale-force winds from hitting my face. He stands as still as a statue, immune to the freezing temperatures. He tilts his head, looking down at me. His eyes are a shocking, vibrant gold in the gloom of the storm. They are not human eyes. They are the eyes of a great cat. They do not view me with the pity the alderman showed. They do not regard me with the cruelty of the guards. They do not even regard me with the simple hunger of a beast. He looks at me the way a man looks at something he suddenly realises he owns.
Chapter 2. Volfric. The humans of the lowlands are pathetic creatures. They breed like rabbits in the mud, cower behind walls of rotting timber, and when the winters grow too harsh, they throw their own trash out into the snow and call it a holy tribute. I look down at the trash chained to my mountain. She is tiny, barely the size of an orc pup. Her hair is the color of dead winter grass, plastered to a skull so fragile I could crush it between my finger and thumb without straining. The villagers left her here in nothing but a scrap of white cloth, as if the cold would ignore her out of pity. The skin on her face has already turned a sickly, translucent blue. This is the offering stone. It is the border between Clan Ison's territory and the valley. I am Jarl of the High Peaks, the master of the Iron Keep, and by ancient law, What is left on this stone belongs to me. Usually I ignore the offerings. A frozen goat or a crate of sour wine is an insult. A frozen woman is a waste of time. I stare down at her. Her eyes are closed. Her chest rises and falls with breath so shallow they barely disturb the snow gathered on her eyelashes. The cold has already breached her blood. She is in the final sleep. It is a slow, agonizing way to die, feeling your own heart freeze from the inside out. I am a warlord. I have slaughtered thousands, but I do not believe in useless cruelty. I reach to my belt, my heavy armored gauntlet wrapping around the hilt of my ironwood dagger. I will cut her throat. It will be fast. The warmth of her own blood will be the last thing she feels. Then I will toss her over the cliff for the scavengers and return to the warmth of my keep. I draw the dagger. The steel hisses in the freezing wind. I lean down, my shadow swallowing her completely. Then the wind shifts. My nostrils flare. My gold eyes narrow. The storm is a chaotic swirl of ice and stone, but beneath it, I catch a scent. Rancid fat. Wet, matted fur. Decay. It is a scent I know. My muscles lock instantly, the dagger freezing in my hand. The human's eyes snap open. They are wide, terrified, and an impossible shade of pale gray. But she is not looking at my face. She is not looking at the 9-inch blade poised inches from her throat. She is looking directly past me, into the swirling whiteout behind my left shoulder. Her lips part. A croaking, desperate sound escapes her frozen throat. She speaks the common tongue. Left! It is a warning. A human would hesitate. A human would look behind them to verify. But I am Clan Eason. I trust the instincts of the battlefield above all else. I pivot on my heel, dropping my center of gravity and raising my armored forearm just as the wall of snow explodes. A snow ursane bursts from the whiteout. It is a nightmare of the peaks. A massive bear warped by the old magics of Protheka, standing 12 feet tall on its hind legs. Its fur is matted with ice, its jaws dripping with black saliva, and its eyes glow with mindless, starving rage. It is 100 stones of pure muscle and slaughter. It lunges, its massive claws swiping for my head. The blow connects with my raised vambrace. The impact is like being hit by a boulder. The steel groans. My boots slide backward across the icy stone, but I hold the line. The ursane roars, a deafening sound that rattles the iron shackles holding the girl. Its foul breath washes over my face, smelling of rotted meat. I roar back. I drop the dagger and draw the great cleaver strapped to my back. The weapon is a slab of jagged volcanic steel, too heavy for any human to lift. The beast drops to all fours and charges again, snapping at my midsection. I sidestep, letting its momentum carry it past me. I bring the cleaver down with both hands. Crunch. The blade shears through the thick, matted fur, the blubber and the heavy spine at the base of the monster's neck. The Urson lets out a wet, gurgling shriek. It collapses, its massive bulk slamming onto the offering stone so hard the cliff edge shudders. Black, steaming blood erupts from the wound, melting the snow in a violent hiss. The beast twitches once, its massive claws scraping against the black stone, and then goes still. I stand over the carcass, my chest heaving, the adrenaline singing in my veins. My breath plumes in the air, thick and fast. I wipe a splash of black blood from my tusks. The ridge falls silent again, save for the howling wind. I turn slowly, looking back at the girl. She has not moved. She is still curled in a ball, watching me with those wide gray eyes. My mind races. The Urson was downwind. Its white fur makes it invisible in the blizzard. Its paws are padded to make no sound on the ice. I am the apex predator of this mountain range, and I did not sense it until it was already mid-leap. But she did. She saw it. She knew where it was coming from. And instead of letting it kill me so she could freeze in peace, she warned me. I walk back to her, my boots crunching in the blood-soaked snow. I drop my cleaver. I look at her differently now. She is not trash. She's not a useless tribute from a pathetic village. Lowlanders do not have the sight. Lowlanders cannot sense the beasts of the peaks. She is an anomaly, a curiosity. She tries to shrink back as I loom over her, but the iron shackles hold her fast. I look at the chains. My rage flares, sudden and hot, not at the girl, but at the animals in the valley who dare to chain something so rare to a rock to die. I reach down. I don't bother picking the locks. I grab the heavy iron chain linking her wrist to the stone ring. I brace my boot against the rock, tighten my grip, and pull. The muscles in my back and shoulders strain. Snap. The iron links shatter like brittle glass. The girl gasps, her arms falling to her sides. I reach for the bone clasps at my throat and undo my heavy wolf fur cloak. I shrug it off. The freezing wind instantly bites at my bare gray skin and the leather armor beneath. But the cold does not bother me. My blood burns too hot for winter to claim me. I drop the massive fur over the girl. It completely swallows her. It is heavy, lined with thick wool, and radiating the intense body heat I have trapped inside it for hours. I reach into the pile of fur and scoop her up. She weighs nothing. A sack of grain requires more effort to lift. Her bones feel like a bird's under my massive hands. I pull her tightly against my chest. Her cheek presses against my armored breastplate, right over my heart. She is shivering violently now, the heat from my cloak and my body shocking her system out of the hypothermic sleep. What? Her voice is a tiny broken whisper. Her gray eyes flutter up to meet my gold ones. What are you doing with me? She speaks the common tongue. Good. That will make this easier. I look at her. The possessive instinct, the ancient primal urge of the orc, rears up in my chest, heavy and undeniable. She warned me of the beast. She is small. She is freezing. And she is mine. You are mine now, I rumble, my voice a deep, gravelly bass that vibrates through her small frame. Her eyes widen in confusion. What? Yes. I shift her weight, adjusting the furs so not an inch of her skin is exposed to the wind. What is your name? Catherine, she replies. Forget that name. You now are my pet, and I will name you as an owner should. I shall call you Little Cat. I turn away from the bleeding carcass of the Ursane and the frozen village in the valley. I carry my prize up the mountain, into the storm, toward the iron gates of Isen Keep.
Chapter 3. Catherine. I am buried alive. That is my first conscious thought as the darkness swallows me. But graves are cold, and this tomb is burning. I am wrapped inside the warlord's massive cloak, enveloped in layers of thick white wolf fur and heavy wool. The transition from the sub-zero blizzard to this intense, suffocating heat is violent. My body rebels. As the ice in my veins begins to thaw, my nerves wake up screaming. It feels like thousands of hot needles are being driven into my fingers and toes. I whimper, a pathetic, broken sound that gets lost in the heavy fabric pressed against my face. The warlord adjusts his grip, pulling me tighter against his chest. Little cat. The words echo in my mind, drowning out the physical pain. Pet. He called me a pet. My father sold me to the monsters to save his harvest, and the monster has decided to keep me like a stray dog. A wave of humiliation washes over me, so thick it nearly chokes me. I was raised as the alderman's daughter. I was a lady of Mannheim, even if I was cursed. I should be insulted. I should be terrified. I should be begging the gods for a quick death. But as I press my frozen nose into the thick fur, inhaling the overwhelming scent of cedar smoke, iron, and rich, musky sweat, I realize the truth. I don't want to die. The shame of being this monster's pet is a small price to pay for the feeling of my heart beating in my chest. I am alive. For now, that is all that matters. I push a trembling hand through the heavy layers of the cloak, parting the fur just enough to let in a sliver of the outside world. I need to see where he is taking me. The wind instantly slashes at my exposed eyes, blinding me with ice crystals, but I force myself to look. We are climbing. The warlord is scaling a near-vertical cliff face of black rock and packed ice. The blizzard is raging so hard around us that the sky and the ground have merged into a single, chaotic wall of white. Yet the warlord moves as if he is walking on flat ground. He takes massive, effortless strides up the impossible incline, his spiked iron boots crunching into the rock with devastating force. I look at the man carrying me. He is not just large, he is monolithic. Pressed against him like this, I feel less like a woman and more like an infant. His chest is a wall of living rock beneath his armour, radiating a heat so intense it feels unnatural, as if his blood is made of magma. I press my ear against his breastplate. Beneath the leather and steel, I can hear his heartbeat. It is not the frantic bird-like flutter of my own heart. It is a slow, heavy drumbeat, thump, 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 relentless, unstoppable. I realise in this moment the sheer, terrifying scale of the predator holding me. He doesn't just dwarf me physically, his presence eclipses me entirely. If he dropped me now, I would fall for 1,000 feet. But his massive arm is locked under my thighs, his other arm securely around my back. He holds me with the casual, unbreakable grip of a creature that has never let anything slip from its grasp. We break through the cloud layer, ascending past the swirling heart of the storm. The wind howls, a dying scream as we reach the plateau. I blink through the sleet, and my breath catches in my throat. Looming out of the whiteout, anchored to the very peak of the mountain range, is Isen Keep. I have heard the stories in the village, whispers of the orcs' fortress in the clouds, but human words cannot capture the sheer violence of its architecture. It is not a castle. Castles are made of cut stone and timber, built by men with a sense of order. This is a brutalist monolith of jagged black iron and volcanic rock, carved directly into the throat of a dormant volcano. It looks like a jagged crown driven into the skull of the mountain. 2 massive statues flank the approach, gargantuan orcish figures chiselled from the obsidian rock, their horned heads bowed, their massive stone axes crossed over the path. The shadows they cast are long and terrifying. At the end of the stone bridge lies the gate. It is 30 feet of black ironwood, reinforced with bands of steel, thick enough to stop a battering ram. Skulls are mounted on the spikes above the archway. Not human skulls. The skulls of giants, dragons, and beasts of the peaks. This is not a place you visit. This is a place you are taken and never leave. The warlord doesn't slow his pace. He marches straight toward the iron gates, his heavy boots echoing like thunder across the stone bridge. He stops before the imposing doors. He doesn't knock. He tips his massive head back and lets out a roar. It is not a word I understand. It is a guttural, earth-shaking sound in the orcish tongue, a command of absolute authority that rattles the iron chains holding the gate. From the watchtowers above, horns blow, deep, mournful blasts that vibrate in my chest. Clank, clank, clank. Gears the size of wagons begin to turn. The massive ironwood gates groan, protesting against the ice, before slowly grinding inward. The warlord steps across the threshold. The sensory shift is so violent it makes me dizzy. The moment we cross under the archway, the freezing, howling wind is sheared off. A wall of heat hits me. It is not the gentle warmth of a hearth fire, it is the heavy, humid heat of a forge. I push the fur hood back completely, staring in shock at the interior of Isen Keep. The stronghold is built around a massive central cavern. Geothermal vents in the floor hiss, filling the dark, vaulted ceiling with thick, sulphurous steam. Below us, massive iron walkways crisscross over glowing pits of molten rock. The air is permeated with noise, the deafening clang, clang, clang of massive hammers striking anvils, the roar of furnaces, and over it all, the rich, heavy, mouth-watering scent of roasting meat and wood smoke. Hundreds of orcs move below us, warriors in heavy armour, blacksmiths with arms the size of tree trunks, women wrapped in thick furs carrying steel. They are a civilization of giants. The gates slam shut behind us, with a boom of finality that echoes through the mountain. I shiver, but not from the cold. The storm is gone. The ice is gone. I have survived the frozen grave, only to be swallowed whole by the fiery belly of the beast. And the beast holding me hasn't even looked down. He strides into his kingdom, carrying his new pet into the dark.
Chapter 4. Volfric. The tower is the highest point in Eisenkeep, carved directly into the black volcanic stone. It is a place of heat, isolation, and absolute authority. It is no place for a human. I kick open the heavy iron doors to my personal quarters. The hinges groan under the force of my boot. The room inside is massive. A natural geothermal pool bubbles in the far corner, filling the cavernous space with a thick, sulphurous steam that keeps the stone warm year-round. The floor is carpeted in the pelts of dire bears and snow stalkers. In the center sits my bed, a vast platform of ironwood piled high with the finest furs. I carry the human to the bed and set her down. She sinks into the thick pelts, looking absurdly small. Her gray eyes are wide, tracking my every movement with the terrified vigilance of prey. She pulls my massive wolf fur cloak tighter around her trembling shoulders, shrinking back against the headboard. I want to stay. The urge to remain in this room, to bathe her, to feed her, and to inspect my new prize is a heavy, primal ache in my chest. But I am Jarl. I cannot indulge my desires while my clan wonders why their warlord has brought a lowland sickness into the sacred keep. I must establish her place immediately, or the clan will tear her apart. I turn away from the shivering little cat and walk out of the room. Scardy is waiting in the corridor. He is a scarred, lethal frost-orc, his face a canvas of old blade work. He is my second in command, my right hand. I call him my axe because he only speaks when it is time to cut. "Guard this door," I rumble. Scardy looks at the heavy iron barrier, then back at me. "The human Jarl. She is my property. No one enters. She does not leave." Scardy thumps his armored fist against his chest in absolute loyalty. "Understood, my warlord." I descend into the belly of the mountain. The great hall is a cavern of noise, fire, and violence. Massive iron braziers cast flickering orange light over the hundreds of warriors, eating, drinking, and arguing at the long stone tables. The air is rich with the smell of roasting mammoth meat, spilled ale, and unwashed bodies. As I stride down the central aisle, the roar of the hall begins to dampen. By the time I reach the high table, the room is quiet, save for the crackle of the fires. I stop by the hearth to greet Hrock. The elder orc sits near the flames, his one good eye gleaming in the firelight. He fought alongside my father, and his loyalty is as deep as the mountain roots. He grunts, raising his drinking horn to me in silent respect. Beside him stands Thorgest, a massive young warrior barely past his 20th winter. He looks at me with pure, unfiltered worship. He sees me as a father. I clasp forearms with the boy, nearly knocking him off balance with my strength. I ascend the dais and sit upon the iron throne. The cold metal feels good against my back. My blood is still running hot, the adrenaline of the Ursane fight warring with the sweet, terrified scent of the human girl that lingers on my armor. I reach for a flagon of ale. Before I can drink, the challengers approach. Gorgash leads them. He is the underchief, a brutal orc who wears the skulls of human soldiers on his belt. He hates the peace. He hates the valley. Flanking him are Ivor, a hulking, brainless brute of a warrior, and Starmir, the clan's wealthiest trader, a sly creature draped in stolen human silk. Gorgash stops at the base of the dais. He doesn't bow. "My warlord," Gorgash says, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "The scouts say you brought the village tribute inside." I did, I say, taking a drink of my ale. Tradition states that offerings left on the stone belong to the clan, Gorgash says, his tusks bared in a challenge. She is a healthy female. Small, but she has a mouth. The warriors are restless from the winter storms. She should be shared among the beds, starting with mine. Ivor grunts his agreement. She is prime stock, Styrmir adds smoothly, his gold rings clicking against his belt. If the warlord does not wish to breed her, we can sell her to the flesh markets of Raich. She would fetch a high price in iron. The hall holds its breath. This is the test. They're waiting to see if I've gone soft, if I will yield to tradition. A red-hot fury boils in my gut at the thought of Gorgash's filthy hands on the little cat. I do not stand up. I do not raise my voice. I set my flagon down. The clack of the metal on stone echoes like a gunshot. I lean forward, resting my elbows on my knees, and look down at Gorgash. She is not a tribute, I say, my voice a low, gravelly vibration that rolls over the crowd. And she is not breeding stock. She is my pet. Gorgash's eyes widen slightly. Your pet? Mine, I repeat. The word is an anvil dropping on the conversation. She belongs to the warlord. She lives in the tower. I look past Gorgash, scanning the faces in the hall. I make eye contact with Ivor. I stare down Styrmir. Hear my law, I declare. If any orc in this keep looks at her with hunger, I will take their eyes. If any orc touches her, I will take their hands. If she bleeds, you all bleed. Rock chuckles from the fireside, a low, approving rumble. Thorgest grins, his hand lying on the pommel of his sword, eager for someone to test the warlord's decree. Gorgash stares at me. His muscles are coiled. For a second, I think he might be stupid enough to draw steel. But he looks at my massive frame, at the heavy cleaver resting against the throne, and at the absolute lack of hesitation in my eyes. He blinks first. Gorgash bows his head, exposing his neck in submission. As the warlord commands, your pet is safe. Ivor and Styrmir quickly follow suit, their eyes dropping to the floor. I lean back in my throne, satisfied. The challenge is broken. The pack has been reminded of the apex. I dismiss Gorgash and his lackeys from my mind. They are brutes, easily cowed by strength. The matter is settled. My rule is absolute, and my prize is secure. Now I can go feed the cat.
Chapter 5. Catherine. I curl myself into the tightest ball possible, pulling the massive white wolf fur cloak over my head like a shroud. I am trying to hide, but you cannot hide from the sounds of Eisen Keep. The tower is built of black volcanic stone, and stone carries noise. Through the walls and up the floorboards, the terrifying reality of this fortress bleeds into my cage. Far below, I hear the rhythmic, earth-shaking clang, clang, clang of massive hammers striking iron, the sound of the forges never sleeping. I hear the heavy march of spiked boots on stone, a platoon of giants moving in unison. Most terrifying of all, I hear the voices, deep guttural roars that vibrate in my chest. To human ears, orcish laughter sounds like a threat, and their arguments sound like slaughter. I am in a nest of monsters. A shiver racks my body, violently rattling my teeth. The ambient heat of the cavernous room is high, smelling of sulphur and dry cedar wood, but the blizzard is still trapped inside my bones. My toes are numb. My fingers throb with a dull, agonizing ache. The heavy iron door at the end of the room is the only barrier between me and the nightmare outside. Suddenly, the noises in the hallway outside shift. The heavy marching stops. A deep voice rumbles an order, and the reply is a sharp salute of armour clapping against armour. Then, the heavy iron lock on my door begins to turn with a metallic shriek. My breath catches in my throat. I scramble backward in the massive bed, pressing my spine against the cold iron headboard. The door swings open with a groan. Wulfric ducks his horned head to clear the massive doorframe. The sheer scale of him steals the air from my lungs. Without the driving snow of the blizzard to obscure him, I can fully see the monster who claimed me. His slate-grey skin is etched with faded white scars, stretched over slabs of impossible muscle. His golden, cat-like eyes sweep the room, locking onto my trembling form hidden in the furs. He kicks the heavy door shut behind him and locks it again. He holds a heavy iron tray in his massive hands. A mouth-watering aroma instantly fills the room, cutting through my terror and seizing my starving stomach. It smells of rich fat, roasted meat, and sharp, earthy spices. He is carrying a deep iron bowl of baru, the traditional heavy orcish stew made with cured meats and root vegetables, alongside thick slabs of seared mammoth flank. Wulfric walks to the side of the bed. He doesn't smile. He doesn't offer comfort. He places the heavy iron tray on the furs beside me. "Eat," he commands. His voice is a low rumble of shifting tectonic plates. My stomach growls audibly. I haven't eaten in 2 days. The alderman didn't see the point in wasting rations on a sacrifice. I reach out from beneath the heavy cloak, my hand trembling violently. My fingers are a sickly, bruised purple, stiff and uncooperative from the frostbite. I wrap my hand around the handle of the large iron spoon resting in the baru. It is heavy, forged for orcish hands, not human ones. I try to lift it to my mouth. Halfway there, my frozen fingers spasm. The heavy spoon slips from my numb grip. Clank. The iron hits the stone floor, scattering dark droplets of stew across the white pelts. I gasp, shrinking back instantly, my arms flying up to shield my face. It is an instinct beaten into me by years of living with a drunken father. Weakness is punished. Clumsiness is punished. I brace myself for the blow, waiting for Wulfric's massive fist to shatter my jaw for ruining his furs. The blow never comes. I peek out from between my arms. Wulfric is staring at the spilled stew, and then down at my trembling, blackened fingers. His brow furrows, not in anger, but in calculation. The bed groans in protest as he sits down on the edge of the mattress. His weight tilts the entire platform, sliding me closer to his massive hip. He reaches down and picks up the iron spoon, wiping it clean on his leather breeches. He dips the spoon into the steaming baru, filling it with rich, dark broth and chunks of tender meat. Then he holds it up to my lips. I stare at him in shock. The great warlord, the beast who sheared the head off a mountain predator with a single blow, is waiting patiently for me to open my mouth. Hesitantly, I part my lips. He tips the spoon. The broth is incredible. It is scalding hot, spiced, and so rich with fat it instantly coats my dry throat. I swallow, and the heat hits my empty stomach like a lit torch. A pathetic whimper of relief escapes me. Wulfric's golden eyes lock onto mine. He shifts closer, raising his free hand to push a matted strand of hair out of my face. I freeze. As his massive calloused fingers brush against my cheek, I brace my mind for the inevitable onslaught. This is the curse of the Doomseer. Touch is a trigger. A brush against a villager in the market, a hand on my shoulder. It always unleashes the sight. It brings the screaming visions of fire, of illness, of the specific, bloody dooms awaiting the people of Protheka. It is a constant, agonizing noise in my skull that has kept me isolated and terrified my entire life. His rough, grey thumb strokes my cheekbone. I squeeze my eyes shut, waiting for the screams, waiting for the blood. There is nothing. Absolute, profound silence. My eyes fly open. The roar in my head is gone. The dark, looming dread that has sat on my chest since I was a child has vanished. In the presence of this behemoth, my sight is completely blocked. His mind, his aura, his sheer overwhelming physical mass acts as an impenetrable shield against the psychic noise of the world. He is a fortress, and I am safely inside the walls. I gaze up at the monster, tears welling in my eyes. Not from fear, but from a wave of relief so intense it feels like intoxication. For the very first time in 20 years, my mind is quiet. I lean forward into his hand, pressing my face against his warm, rough palm. Wulfric's pupils dilate slightly at the contact, the gold of his irises swallowing the room. He makes a low, guttural sound in the back of his throat. He scoops up another spoonful of the stew and feeds it to me. I eat greedily now, my eyes fixed on his face, tethering myself to the impossible peace radiating from his skin. He feeds me until the heavy iron bowl is scraped clean. He tears off strips of the roasted mammoth meat and feeds them to me directly from his fingers, watching the hunger drain out of my eyes. But as the last of the food settles in my stomach, the violent shivering returns. My teeth begin to chatter so hard my jaw aches. I curl my knees up to my chest, the deep hypothermic cold stubbornly clinging to my core, despite the food and the furs. Wulfric sets the tray aside. He presses the back of his hand against my neck. Even through my numbness, I can feel the magma-like heat of his skin. "The ice is still in your blood," he rumbles, a note of deep displeasure in his voice. He doesn't ask. He doesn't warn me. Wulfric reaches into the nest of furs and scoops me up. I gasp, my stomach dropping as he lifts me effortlessly into his arms, cradling me against his armoured chest. The room spins. I am completely helpless against his strength. He carries me away from the bed, marching toward the far shadowed corner of the cavern. A thick curtain of white steam rises from the black stone floor. As we get closer, I see the source of the mist. A massive, sunken pool is carved directly into the volcanic rock, filled with bubbling turquoise geothermal water. The heat rolling off the surface is intense, smelling of deep earth minerals and the faint, sweet trace of resid herbs that have been scattered into the water to soothe the muscles of the warlord. Wulfric stops by the steaming pool. The reflection of the bubbling water dances in his golden eyes. I look at the boiling depths, and then up at the giant holding me. He intends to burn the winter out of my bones, and I am entirely at his mercy.
Escape this world and step into one where romance and magic intertwine across realms, with stories that are not just standalone tales, but part of a vast, interconnected universe.
Imagine not just one, but 100 stories, where characters, destinies, and legends cross paths in unexpected ways.
100 audiobooks from the Romantasy 100 book bundle.
These aren't just isolated stories. They share themes, worlds, and threads that make every journey feel part of something grander.
Fated lovers, ancient prophecies, and the delicate balance between power and passion.
Get all of these stories today for a mind-blowing 90% off. That's right, 100 audiobooks for the price of 10.
800 hours of audio where these alpha males prove just how puny the human men of Protheka are. 12 complete series where they show their human women what they've been missing and more.
One-time purchase, lifetime access to a universe of interconnected magic and romance.
Protheka's magic is eternal. With the Romantasy 100 book bundle, your pleasure will be too. Chapter 6. Wulfric. I stop near the steaming basin, the heavy mist swirling around my armored greaves. The geothermal pool is a sacred place in the tower, fed by the deep, churning blood of the mountain. It is a place of recovery where I come to soak the deep cold from my own scarred joints after a brutal winter campaign. Today it is a forge to remake the little cat. She trembles violently against my chest, her teeth chattering so hard I can hear them clicking over the ambient hiss of the steam. The human clothes she wears are an insult to my eyes. A thin, filthy linen dress soaked through with melted snow and sweat, clinging to her emaciated frame like a second skin. It is the garb of a peasant, a rag fit only for the fire. It has done nothing to protect her. I set her on her feet at the pool's edge, keeping one massive hand clamped around her waist to support her. Her knees buckle instantly. She has no strength left. With my free hand, I reach down and grab the collar of the ruined linen dress. I do not bother searching for ties or laces. I curl my fingers into the fabric and pull. The cheap human cloth tears with a sharp, pathetic rip, shearing apart down the center like wet paper. I strip the rags from her shoulders, pulling the fabric down her shivering body and letting it drop to the wet black stone beneath our feet. There is no lust in the action. I do not stare at her naked form with the hunger of a male. I look at her with the calculating, furious gaze of a jarl inspecting a prize that has been brutally neglected. Stripped bare in the swirling mist, the sheer, staggering smallness of her is absolute. She is a miniature thing. I look down at my own hand resting against her hip. My thick, slate-gray fingers span the entire width of her waist, the tips of my thumb and middle finger easily overlapping. If I squeezed with even a fraction of my strength, I would crush her spine. As the heat of the steam begins to clear the dirt and ice from her skin, the clinical detachment in my mind vanishes, replaced by a wave of red-hot, blinding fury. The humans did not just neglect her. They broke her. Her skin is an unnatural, sickly, translucent blue from the hypothermia. But that is not what makes the growl rumble deep in my chest. Circling her incredibly fragile wrists and ankles are deep, agonizing bands of purple and black. The skin is rubbed raw, weeping with slow droplets of blood. The iron shackles. I remember the heavy chains I shattered on the ridge. I remember the aldermen walking away into the storm. They bolted this tiny creature to a slab of freezing rock to be eaten. I reach out, tracing the dark ring of bruising on her wrist with the blunt tip of my index claw. She flinches, a tiny whimper escaping her blue lips. The sound hits my ears, and the fury solidifies into a cold, unbreakable oath. I am Wulfric. I am the Iron Hand. Clan Ison does not tolerate the abuse of what belongs to us. We protect our pack. We protect our prizes. The humans think they have bought their survival with this sacrifice, but they have only bought their doom. When the spring thaws the passes and the ice melts, I will march my warband down the mountain. I will find the men who put these chains on her, and I will burn Mannheim to the ground. But vengeance will not keep her alive tonight. "Hold your breath, little cat," I rumble. I scoop her up again, cradling the back of her head with one hand and supporting her legs with the other. I step down into the sunken pool. The water is nearly boiling, heavily mineralized and steeped in Rearsed herbs, a potent mountain plant that smells faintly of sharp pine and sweet earth, known for its ability to draw toxins from the blood and soothe ravaged muscles. I lower her into the turquoise depths. As the water covers her chest, she gasps, a sharp, ragged sound. Her spine arches violently as the intense heat shocks her frozen nervous system. Her hands fly up, grabbing at my forearms. Her fingernails are dull and brittle, scratching uselessly against my thick gray skin. "Easy," I command, my voice low and steady to ground her. "Let the heat in." I sink to my knees in the pool, the water rising to my own chest. I hold her suspended in front of me. I keep my massive hands anchored securely on her hips so she does not slip under the surface. She stops fighting the heat after a few seconds. Her head lolls back against my chest, her muscles finally losing the rigid tension of the cold. I begin to wash her. I cup the hot, fragrant water in my hands and pour it over her shoulders, washing away the grime of the valley. The contrast between us is stark in the glowing light of the cavern. My hands are the color of a bruised storm, thick with calluses, my knuckles ridged and scarred from decades of blade work. Her skin is the color of fresh cream, soft and utterly unmarked, save for the violence done to her by others. I'm washing a delicate snow lily with a boulder. I move my hands down her arms, massaging the heat into her frozen limbs. I work the blood back into her numb fingers, being careful not to press too hard against the delicate bones. The Rearsed herbs do their work. The sickly blue color recedes from her flesh, replaced by a deep, healthy flush of pink. But as the deep frost leaves her, something else takes its place. I feel the shift happen instantly. The little cat is pressed tightly against me, her bare back resting against the leather of my armor. Suddenly, beneath my anchoring hands on her waist, I feel her heart rate spike. It is a rapid, frantic fluttering, like a trapped bird beating its wings against her ribs. I pause my washing, my brow furrowing. I gaze down at her face. Her eyes are open now, looking up at me through the steam. The pupils are blown wide, eclipsing the pale gray of her irises, until her eyes look almost entirely black. Her lips are parted, drawing in short, shallow breaths. I move my hand down the length of her thigh, intending to massage the cramped muscle. A soft, breathy sound catches in her throat, a wet, stuttering gasp that is entirely different from the whimpers of pain she made earlier. Her hips shift under my grip, pressing instinctively up into my palms. I freeze. I am a warlord. I understand the mechanics of battle. I understand the language of violence, strategy, and survival. I do not understand the subtle, chaotic biology of human females. My tactical mind tries to analyze the data. Her heart is racing. Her skin is burning hot. Her eyes are unfocused, and she is making erratic, delirious noises. Fever! The extreme shift in temperature has overwhelmed her fragile system. The transition from the sub-zero blizzard to the boiling pool was too fast. She is going into shock. I am cooking her. A spike of genuine panic, a sensation I have not felt since I was an unblooded pup, pierces through my chest. At the same time, an alien heat begins to rise in my own blood. My nostrils flare, taking in a sudden shift in her scent. Beneath the smell of the herbs and the steam, there is something heavy and sweet radiating off her skin. It hits the base of my brain, making the tips of my tusks ache and my chest feel tight. It is a primal biological trigger I cannot name, but my body responds to it with a surge of possessive aggression. She shifts again, her wet skin sliding against mine, another breathy, feverish sound escaping her lips. I cannot let her die in this water. I cannot let the fever take her. Enough! I growl, my voice harsher and deeper than I intend, rough with the sudden, inexplicable tension in my own body. I stand up abruptly, the water cascading off my armor in heavy sheets. I lift her high out of the pool, dripping and flushed. She makes a confused, frustrated sound at the loss of the water's heat, reaching out to cling to my shoulders. Her touch burns through the wet leather of my armor. I step out of the pool, my boots squelching on the stone. I need to get her dry. I need to get her into the furs. I need to stop this erratic, racing heartbeat before her tiny frame gives out completely. I carry my prize back toward the bed, my mind racing, completely oblivious to the fact that I have not induced a fever in the little cat, but a fire.
Chapter 7. Catherine. The transition from the boiling, mineral-heavy water back into the cool air of the cavern is a violent shock, but not because of the cold. As Wulfric lifts me dripping wet from the pool, my body does not shiver. My skin is burning. A heavy, intoxicating heat is radiating from my core, rushing through my bloodstream and pooling low in my belly. My heart is beating so fast I can feel it hammering against my ribs, and my breath comes in short, ragged gasps. Every inch of my skin that his massive hands touched is buzzing with a raw, electric sensitivity that I have never felt before. He sets me down on the black stone floor near the glowing hearth. Before I can even attempt to cover my nakedness, he drapes a massive, heavy drying pelt over my shoulders. It is thick, absorbing the water instantly. Wulfric steps back, towering over me. His golden eyes are wide, scanning my flushed face with an intensity that makes the breath hitch in my throat. He is breathing heavily too, his chest heaving under his wet armour, his nostrils flaring as he takes in the scent of the steam in the room. He mutters something in Orcish, a low, rough string of guttural syllables that sound like a tactical assessment. "The fever has taken hold," he rumbles in Common, his voice tight. "Your heart is racing. We must dress you quickly to trap the heat. I stare up at him, my lips parted in sheer disbelief. The great warlord, the beast who commands a fortress of monsters, has absolutely no idea what he has just done to me. He thinks I am dying of heatstroke. He has mistaken the violent, sudden rush of my own sexual awakening for a deadly illness. The terrifying giant is completely, utterly ignorant of the biology of a human woman. A strange, breathless realization washes over me beneath the heavy pelt. In this one specific arena, the apex predator is completely out of his depth, and the heat pooling between my thighs is entirely my own secret. Wulfric turns his back to me and strides toward a massive iron-bound chest near the foot of his bed. He throws open the heavy lid with a screech of metal. The chest is filled with the spoils of the mountain passes, fine goods taken from high-end merchant caravans that dared to cross his territory. He rummages through the silks and linens with his massive grey hands, finally pulling out a tunic. It is made of Naga-spun silk, a deep, blood-red crimson that shimmers in the firelight, embroidered with threads of real gold along the collar and hem. It is a garment fit for a high noble's wife. He walks back to me. "Raise your arms, little cat." I hesitate, the shame warring with the strange new buzz in my veins. But I obey. I let the drying pelt fall to the floor. The warlord does not look away. As I raise my arms, his golden eyes track the movement, taking in the bruised expanse of my ribs, the curve of my waist, the pale skin of my thighs. His gaze is a physical weight, heavy and unblinking. He gathers the rich crimson silk in his massive hands and carefully guides it over my head. The sensation of the Naga silk sliding down my bare skin is exquisite. It is cool and impossibly soft against my flushed, sensitive flesh. But the garment is absurdly large. The shoulders slump down my arms, and the hem drops all the way past my knees, swallowing me whole like a grand gown. Wulfric steps back to inspect his work. The sight of me, bruised and tiny, drowning in the stolen finery of a warlord, seems to satisfy some deep, possessive urge within him. He reaches out, his massive fingers gently adjusting the gold-trimmed collar, where it hangs loosely over my collarbone. His knuckles brush my skin, and I shiver, biting my lower lip to stifle the sound that threatens to escape my throat. The humiliation of being dressed like a child's doll is absolute. Yet underneath the shame, that illicit, terrifying warmth flares again. I have been feared and shunned my entire life. No man has ever looked at me. Now, the most dangerous creature on the mountain is staring at me as if I am the most precious thing in his hoard. "Good," he grunts, seemingly satisfied that the fine cloth will cure my fever. "Now you sleep." He turns and guides me toward the middle of the room. My eyes fall on the massive bed. It is a vast platform of dark ironwood, the mattress piled high with the deepest, richest furs. I am exhausted. My bones ache with a bone-deep weariness, and the thought of sinking into that massive mattress is overwhelming. I take a step toward the middle of the bed. Wulfric's hand gently but firmly catches my shoulder, stopping me. "No," he says simply. He guides me past the head of the bed, walking me all the way around to the absolute foot of the massive frame. I stop, confused. At the foot of the bed, a small, circular geothermal vent in the black stone floor hisses softly, radiating a steady, intense column of heat up from the volcano below. Wulfric stops right next to the vent. Using the tip of his spiked boot and his massive hands, he begins to arrange a pile of thick white snowstalker pelts on the floor. He pushes the furs into a deep circle, creating a bowl of softness directly in the path of the thermal heat. He steps back and gestures to the pile on the floor. The reality crashes down on me like a bucket of icy water. The illicit warmth in my belly vanishes, replaced instead by a crushing weight of degradation. It is a nest. It is a dog's bed. I look up at the towering mattress of the warlord, and then down at the pile of furs on the floor. The message could not be clearer. The alderman's daughter is dead. I am not a guest in Ison Keep. I am not a woman to be courted, nor am I a prisoner of war to be held for ransom. I am a pet, and pets do not sleep on the master's bed. They sleep at his feet. A lump of pure humiliation forms in my throat. I want to weep. I want to scream at the indignity of it. "Get in!" Wulfric commands, oblivious to my internal collapse. The heat from the stone will keep the cold away. I do not have the strength to fight him. I do not have the strength to preserve whatever pathetic scraps of my pride remain. Silently, I step into the circle of pelts and sink down. I curl myself into a tight ball, pulling my knees up to my chest. The crimson silk pools around me. I pull the top layer of the snowstalker fur over my head, trying to hide my tears from the monster. Above me, the heavy ironwood bed groans in protest. Wulfric has climbed onto the mattress. I hear the rustle of leather and the heavy clank of metal as he removes his armour. Then, a sudden sweeping darkness falls over the room as he extinguishes the remaining torches. The tower plunges into blackness, lit only by the faint subterranean orange glow of the distant hearth. I lay perfectly still in my nest at the foot of his bed. I wait for the misery to consume me. I wait for the grief of my lost life to break me. But as the minutes tick by in the dark, something entirely different happens. The snowstalker pelts are incredibly soft against my cheek, softer than any mattress I had in Mannheim. The heat rising from the stone vent is perfect, a constant comforting embrace that soothes the last of the aches in my joints. My stomach is full of rich, spiced mammoth meat. And the silence, the absolute beautiful silence. I press my hands against my ears, waiting for the whispers. I wait for the screaming visions of my father bleeding out, or the children of the village freezing in the snow. I wait for the curse of the sight to invade my mind as it does every night, keeping me awake until I weep from exhaustion. Nothing comes. Above me, the warlord shifts. The massive rhythmic sound of his deep breathing fills the room, a slow, hypnotic thump, thump, thump of his monolithic heart. His overwhelming presence acts like a heavy blanket over my mind, smothering the psychic noise. A profound sense of peace begins to seep into my bones, overriding the shame. The world outside this tower is full of people who hate me. My father chained me to a rock to die. The villagers threw stones at my window, but here, in the dark, at the feet of a monster, I am warm. I am fed. I am protected by a creature who can rip a bear in half with his bare hands. The label of pet no longer feels like a chain. It feels like a shield. I let out a long, slow sigh, the tension finally leaving my body. Snug inside my crimson silk and white fur, nestled in the protective shadow of the warlord, I close my eyes. The dark is no longer something to fear. At last, after 20 years, I fall into a deep, dreamless sleep.
Chapter 8. Wulfric. My golden eyes snap open in the dark. I sit up, the heavy furs falling from my shoulders. I look toward the foot of the bed. The little cat is thrashing violently in her nest of white snowstalker pelts. Her small hands claw desperately at the air, fighting off invisible enemies. Her head whips side to side, a broken, terrified sob escaping her lips. She is trapped in the dark of her own mind, reliving the cruelties of the life she left behind. My chest tightens. A sudden, violent protective urge overrides my tactical mind. I drop down from the massive mattress. The chill of the black stone floor against my bare feet does not even register. I step to the nest and reach into the pelts. "Peace," I rumble, scooping her into my arms. She is rigid with terror, her skin clammy with a cold sweat, shivering uncontrollably. The nest on the floor is not enough to break through a terror this deep. She needs an anchor. I climb back into the middle of the massive bed, taking her with me. I do not set her beside me. I lay flat on my back and place her directly on top of my chest. My body is a furnace, my blood burning with the geothermal heat of the mountain. The moment her cold skin makes contact with my bare chest, she gasps. I wrap my heavy arms around her, pressing her small frame firmly against me, letting the slow, steady thump, thump, thump of my monolithic heart act as a drumbeat to ground her. It works. The violent thrashing subsides. She lets out a long, ragged exhale and goes limp. Seeking the ultimate safety, she buries her face into the crook of my neck, pressing her nose against my pulse point. That is when the air shifts. As she presses against my throat, I inhale deeply. My enhanced senses are immediately overwhelmed. Sorry for the interruption. I know you were gearing up for a steamy scene, but it's way too hot for this platform.
If we want to keep sharing our stories for free, we have to abide by this platform's guidelines.
To get the full, unabridged audiobook, go to worldsofprotheka.com.
Browse through unabridged audiobooks, countless ebooks and bundles offered at a discount.
If the thought of me whispering all the dirty details into your ear isn't enticing enough, use discount code YouTube30 to get 30% off of all digital products.
Story after story, audiobook after audiobook, the Worlds of Protheka are waiting for you.
Protheka's magic is eternal.
But unabridged, it's unforgettable. Chapter 9. Catherine. The morning light in Eason Keep is not the soft, golden dawn of the valley. It is a harsh, subterranean orange, filtering up through the floor vents and bleeding through the narrow arrow slits carved high in the black stone walls. I wake up in the absolute centre of the massive ironwood bed, tangled in a sea of white furs and crimson silk. I am alone. I sit up, pulling the heavy pelts up to my chin. The room is quiet, save for the low, constant hiss of the geothermal pool in the corner. Across the cavernous room, standing before the great hearth, is the warlord. Wulfric has already strapped on his armour. The scarred, blackened leather and steel plates cover his chest and thighs, transforming him back from the creature of the night into a monolithic instrument of war. He reaches for his great cleaver, the massive slab of jagged volcanic steel resting against the wall, and straps it to his back with a heavy iron chain. He turns to look at me. His golden eyes catch the firelight, burning bright in the gloom of the tower. He does not approach the bed. The primal beast that held me down in the dark is gone, buried beneath the mantle of the Jarl. I go to the great hall, he rumbles, his broken common echoing off the vaulted stone ceiling. The clan has demands. I must rule. I nod slowly, clutching the furs tightly in my fists. I want to ask him to stay. I want him to come back to the bed and wrap his magma-hot body around mine, but I do not dare speak. Wulfric walks to the heavy iron door. He stops, his massive hand resting on the latch, and looks back at me one last time. I lock the door, he says, his voice a deep, gravelly promise. You are safe in the den. No one enters. He ducks his horned head and steps out into the corridor. The heavy door swings shut with a boom of absolute finality. I hear the metallic clank of the external lock sliding home, followed by the heavy, rhythmic thud of his spiked boots descending the stone stairwell. The sound fades. The fortress swallows him. I am completely alone. As the distance between us grows, the perfect, blissful silence in my mind begins to fray at the edges. The psychic shield his overwhelming presence provided is gone. I can feel the ambient noise of the keep pressing against the walls of the tower, a low, buzzing hum of anger, hunger and violence from the hundreds of orcs below. It makes my skin prickle, but it doesn't overwhelm me. My mind is too preoccupied with the memory of the night. I lay back down against the massive pillows, staring up into the shadows of the vaulted ceiling. I wait for the shame to hit me. I wait for the crushing guilt that my upbringing dictates I should feel. In Mannheim, a woman who gives herself to a man before the temple vows is ruined. A woman who gives herself to a monster should be driven to the rope. I was the alderman's daughter. I should be weeping. I should be begging the gods for forgiveness. Instead, a slow, electric heat begins to spread through my veins. I don't feel ruined. I feel alive. I close my eyes, and the memory of the dark crashes over me. I remember the paralyzing weight of his massive body pinning me to the mattress. I remember the smell of his musk, so heavy and rich it made my head spin. I remember the terrifying, impossible sensation of his mouth on my body. A ragged breath escapes my lips, the sound loud in the quiet room. It was my first. 20 years of living in a cold, fearful silence, and the warlord shattered it in a single night. The peak had not been gentle or sweet. It had been a violent, total eclipse of my senses, a tidal wave of pleasure so intense I had sobbed into the furs. He had held my hips locked in his massive hands, absorbing my spasms as if he were grounding a storm. I try to imagine a normal human man making me feel that way. I picture the clumsy, callous boys of the village, or the sweaty, rough guards who chained me to the rock. The thought is laughable. They are nothing. Dust. The monster I was supposed to fear has unlocked a part of my body and soul that I didn't even know existed. The terror of his size is gone, replaced by a deep, addictive, terrifying craving. I shift under the furs, my thighs rubbing together. The friction sends a jolt of raw sensitivity up my spine. My skin is still buzzing. My body is singing a new, hungry song, and the singer has just walked out the door. My thoughts inevitably drift back to the warlord. Last night was just a taste. He had used his mouth, his hands. He had marked me, but he had not claimed me. My heart rate accelerates, a thumping beat against my ribs, as my mind goes to the most dangerous place of all. I try to picture his anatomy. I try to imagine the sheer, impossible scale of his manhood. If his hands can span my entire waist, if his shoulders block out the light, the weapon between his legs must be monstrous. Dark, heavy, and terrifyingly large. Could I even take him? The question makes my breath hitch. I imagine him parting my thighs again, his golden eyes blown wide with the madness of the rut. I imagine the agonizing stretch of him pushing inside me, splitting me open. Would it hurt? Would it tear me apart? Or would it simply consume me, filling the empty, cold spaces of my life with his absolute, undeniable heat? A wave of dizziness washes over me at the thought. The illicit curiosity is intoxicating. The idea of submitting completely to that kind of destructive power makes my head spin. I realise with a sharp intake of breath that I am dripping wet. The need is a sudden, sharp ache between my legs. The room is locked. No one is coming. I am safe in the warlord's den. Slowly, driven by this new, overwhelming instinct, I slide my hand down beneath the heavy snow-stalker pelts. My fingers brush against the hem of the oversized crimson silk tunic. I push it up, exposing my thighs to the warm air trapped beneath the covers. I trace the line of my hip, following the path his rough, calloused fingers had taken the night before. I gasp as I brush against my own sensitized flesh. I am so wet, slick with my own desire for the monster. I spread my legs wider beneath the furs, arching my back into the mattress. I press my fingers against my core, chasing the ghost of his touch, chasing that obliterating, beautiful darkness he gave me. Clank. My hand freezes. My eyes snap open. The sound is sharp and metallic, cutting through the heavy silence of the tower like a knife. I stop breathing, every muscle in my body locking rigid. My heart slams against my ribs, the blood roaring in my ears. Clank. I look across the cavernous room. At the far end of the chamber, the heavy iron handle of the warlord's door is moving. It turns slowly, deliberately, until it hits the resistance of the heavy external deadbolt. It stops. The silence stretches for one agonizing second. My mind races. Wulfric locked the door. Wulfric is in the Great Hall. Wulfric would not test the lock. He has the key. Whoever is on the other side of that door is not my protector. Suddenly the handle begins to shake. It is not a polite knock. It is a violent, desperate rattling. The heavy iron wood of the door groans in its frame as someone throws their full, massive weight against the barrier. The hinges screech. The thick metal latch shudders violently under the assault. Someone inside the keep knows the warlord is gone, and they are desperately trying to force their way into the cage.
Chapter 10. Wulfric. The business of ruling is a loud, foul-smelling thing. I sit upon the Iron Throne for 4 hours, listening to the endless petty grievances of the clan. A dispute over the distribution of winter grain. A blood feud between 2 minor families over a stolen snowstalker pelt. A complaint from the forge masters about the quality of the iron ore being mined from the lower vents. I resolve each issue with a single word or a gesture. I am the Iron Hand. My rulings are absolute, backed by the massive great cleaver resting against the side of the throne. But today my patience is thin. The great hall is suffocating. The air is thick with the stench of unwashed bodies, stale ale, and the sharp, aggressive musk of hundreds of restless warriors trapped inside by the blizzards. The noise grates on my nerves, the roaring laughter, the clatter of iron plates, the braying challenges. Normally I feed on this energy. I am a warlord. The violence and the noise are the lifeblood of my keep. But today the roar of the hall feels hollow. It feels like an intrusion. My mind is not on the politics of the mountain. It is 1,000 feet above me, locked behind a heavy iron door in the quiet warmth of the tower. I stand up abruptly. The movement silences the hall instantly. Hundreds of eyes turn toward the dais. I do not offer an explanation or a dismissal. I simply pick up my cleaver, strap the heavy volcanic steel to my back, and step down from the throne. The Jarl's business is concluded for the day. Rock barks from his place by the hearth, covering my departure. Back to your meat, you dogs. I leave the cavernous hall through the high archway, my heavy spiked boots carrying me up into the quieter, darker levels of the mountain fortress. The higher I climb, the colder the ambient air of the corridors becomes, and the sweeter the silence. I want the quiet. I want the smell of cedar wood and the soft, white furs of my bed. I take the winding stone stairwell that leads to the final plateau of the fortress. The torches up here are spaced further apart, casting long, flickering shadows against the black obsidian walls. As I turn the corner into the long, dim corridor leading to the tower, a massive shadow detaches itself from the wall near my quarters. My hand goes to the hilt of my dagger instantly, my muscles coiled for violence. The shadow steps into the light of a sputtering torch. It is Gorgash. The Underchief stands in the hall, blocking my path. He is in full armor, the bleached skulls of human soldiers rattling softly against his heavy iron belt as he shifts his weight. His tusks are bared in a neutral expression that doesn't quite reach his dark, ambitious eyes. The corridor suddenly feels very small, 2 predators forced into a confined space. "My warlord," Gorgash says, his voice a gravelly rumble that echoes off the stone. He bows his head slightly, but the movement is stiff, a mockery of true deference. "You leave the hall early." I do not slow my pace. I walk directly toward him, forcing him to either hold his ground or step aside. My size dwarfs his by a full head and 100 pounds of muscle. Gorgash steps aside at the last second, his jaw tightening. "What are you doing on this level, Underchief?" I ask, my voice cold and flat. I stop just past him, turning my head to look down at the usurper. "Inspecting the guards," Gorgash replies smoothly, gesturing vaguely down the dark hall. "The upper armory watch has been lax. I came to tighten the discipline." "The guards answer to Scardi," I state, my golden eyes locked onto his. "And you are on the wrong side of the mountain. The upper armory is in the west wing." Gorgash doesn't flinch, though the muscles in his thick neck bulge. He offers a slow, lazy shrug, the human skulls on his belt clacking together. A wrong turn in the dark, Jarl. The winter makes the shadows long. Watch your step, Gorgash, I warn him, my voice dropping to a dangerous, vibrating bass. The shadows up here have teeth. I will remember that, my warlord. He offers that stiff, disrespectful bow again and walks away, heading down the corridor toward the main stairwell. I watch him go, my hand still resting on the hilt of my blade. My tactical mind instantly flags the encounter. Gorgash is a brute, but he is not an idiot. He does not take wrong turns in a fortress he has lived in since he was a whelp. He was loitering. He was testing the perimeter. I turn and ascend the final flight of steps to the heavy iron door of the tower. Scardy is not at his post. I sent him to oversee the changing of the outer gate watch, but the door is secure. I inspect the heavy iron lock. I run my gloved fingers over the metal, looking for fresh scratches, for signs of tampering or forced entry. There is nothing. The seal is completely undisturbed. Gorgash was simply testing boundaries, probing the territory of the Alpha to see if there were any weaknesses he could exploit. I will have to deal with the Underchief soon. He is a rot inside the clan, and rot must be cut out with a blade. I pull the heavy iron key from my belt and slide it into the lock. The tumblers turn with a heavy, satisfying clank. I push the massive door open, stepping inside my den, and pull the door shut behind me. I slide the heavy interior deadbolt home, sealing the world and its politics outside. I turn around ready to assess the security of the room. My eyes fall on the massive bed. Catherine is sitting up among the white snowstalker pelts. She is no longer drowned in the oversized silks. She has shed the heavy layers, wearing only a thin, white linen shift that clings to her flushed skin. Her hair is a wild, beautiful tangle around her pale face, and her wide gray eyes are locked onto mine, dilated and dark. I take a breath. The air moving through the room is thick. It is heavy with the scent of the geothermal pool, the cedar logs burning in the hearth, and something else. It hits my enhanced senses like a physical blow. It is the rich, maddeningly sweet musk of her arousal. It is the scent of the heat I started last night, the scent of her, baked into the sheets and radiating off her skin. The collision is instantaneous and absolute. The tactical map of the fortress in my mind is wiped clean. The suspicion regarding Gorgash evaporates into meaningless smoke. The politics of the keep, the safety of the clan, the duties of the Jarl, all of it is obliterated in a single, blinding second. My body reacts with violent, uncontrollable speed. The blood drains from my head, rushing downward with a ferocity that makes my vision tunnel. My manhood goes rock hard against the front of my scarred leather breeches, aching with a primal, heavy weight that is almost painful. The sudden pleasure is so thick and demanding it forces a low, guttural growl from my throat. The muscles in my thighs and back lock tight. The tips of my silver-capped tusks ache. I'm no longer the warlord. I'm no longer the strategist. I'm reduced to the most basic, undeniable imperative of my species. I'm the male, and the female in my bed is ready. Little Cat's breath hitches at the sound of my growl. Her chest rises and falls rapidly beneath the thin linen. She does not shrink away. She shifts her hips in the furs, her legs parting slightly, an unconscious invitation driven by the same biological gravity that is pulling me across the room. I do not remember walking to the bed. I reach up and unclasp the heavy iron chain holding the great cleaver to my back, letting the massive weapon drop to the stone floor with a deafening crash. I tear the leather gauntlets from my hands. My golden eyes are locked onto hers, burning with a fire that has nothing to do with the hearth. The only thought left in my mind is the absolute, consuming need to bury myself inside her heat. I must have my mate.
Chapter 11. Catherine. His growl vibrates through the air like thunder rolling down the mountain, shaking me to my core. Volfric's golden eyes blaze with feral hunger as he stalks toward the bed, shedding his armor like it's nothing. The crash of his great cleaver hitting the stone floor echoes in my chest, matching the frantic pound of my heart. I'm frozen in the furs, my body a traitor, thighs slick with arousal I can't deny, nipples tight and aching under the thin linen shift. He's massive, a wall of scarred green muscle and raw power, his manhood already straining against his breeches, thick as my forearm and veined like twisted ropes.
As much as Samara and I want to finish what these two characters have started, it looks like this chapter is about to get too hot for this platform to handle.
Unfortunately, we have to pause here because their guidelines won't allow us to reveal the spiciest details.
They keep bringing you these free audiobooks. We have to follow their rules.
But don't worry. You can experience the full, unabridged version over at worldsofprotheka.com, where the boundaries of passion and fantasy collide.
Use code YouTube30 for 30% off any of our unabridged audiobooks set in the rich and immersive worlds of Protheka.
Protheka's magic is eternal.
With these scenes, it will be unforgettable.
Finally, he stills, chest heaving, still locked inside. His weight presses me into the furs, safe and owned. I whimper softly, aftershocks rippling through me, my body limp and ruined. "Good pet," he murmurs, licking the bite mark. "My little cat, mine forever." As the haze clears, I realise the truth. He's broken me, and I've never felt more whole.
Chapter 12. Wulfric. The storm is over. The tower is quiet again, save for the heavy, ragged sound of our breathing. The air is thick. It hangs heavy with the musky, pungent scent of the rut, the salt of our sweat, and the damp heat radiating from the geothermal vents. I lie flat on my back in the ruined bed. The white snowstalker pelts are tangled and damp beneath us. The little cat is sprawled across my chest, her pale, bruised body rising and falling with the steady rhythm of my own lungs. My massive arm is wrapped securely around her waist, anchoring her to me. I look down at her, and a profound, alien sense of peace settles over my mind. I did not break her. The fear had been a cold stone in my gut the entire time, warring with the blinding red mist of my lust. I'm a creature forged for war. My hands crush iron. My weight snaps bones. When the madness of the mating frenzy finally overtook me, I was terrified that my monstrous strength would tear her fragile human frame apart. Instead, she had opened for me. She had absorbed the full, terrifying brunt of my size, crying out not in agony, but in a chaotic, desperate surrender. She had clawed at my back, her blunt human nails leaving faint white scratches on my scarred gray skin, urging me deeper. I shift slightly, pressing my lips to the damp crown of her head. My golden eyes flutter shut. My guard drops completely. The ever-vigilant warlord, the beast who sleeps with one hand on his blade, vanishes. I am completely stripped of my armor, both metal and mental. In this heavy, euphoric aftermath, I am entirely vulnerable, connected to my mate on a level that transcends flesh. It is the deepest mistake I could have made. Because our connection is absolute in this moment, the heavy, imposing psychic shield of my presence, the natural barrier of my mind that has kept her safe since she arrived, dissolves. I open the gates of my fortress to her, and the world floods in. Catherine's body locks rigid against my chest. It happens in the span of a single heartbeat. The soft, pliant flesh beneath my hand suddenly goes as taut as a drawn bowstring. Her breath hitches violently, a sharp, choked gasp, as if all the air has been sucked from her lungs. My eyes snap open. Little cat. I sit up instantly, my battle instincts flaring. I pull her off my chest and hold her at arm's length. Panic, raw and unfamiliar, surges through my veins. I scan her body frantically, looking for blood, looking for the physical damage I must have caused. Did I crush a rib? Did the sheer size of me cause an internal tear that is only bleeding now? "Catherine!" I growl, shaking her shoulders gently. "Where does it hurt?" She does not answer. She is trembling so violently her teeth are clattering together. I look up at her face and my blood runs ice cold. Her head is thrown back. Her jaw is slack. Her eyes are wide open, but the pale gray irises are gone. They have rolled completely back into her skull, showing only the stark, milky white of the sclera. She begins to thrash in my grip. It is not the weak thrashing of a night terror. Her small hands clamp down on my massive forearms with a sudden, impossible strength. Her nails dig into my thick skin, drawing blood. Then, she screams. It is a high, piercing shriek of absolute, unfiltered terror. It echoes off the vaulted stone ceiling of the tower, a sound that makes the fine hairs on my neck stand up. It is not a scream of physical pain. It is the sound of a mind being ripped open. "Blood on the black stone," she gasps. The voice that comes out of her throat is not the soft, hesitant voice of the human girl. It is deeper, layered with a strange, resonant echo, as if three people are speaking through her vocal cords at once. It is the voice of the seer. "The mountain cracks from the inside," the voice chants, rapid and breathless. Catherine's white eyes stare blindly at the ceiling, seeing a horror that I cannot. Shadows in the lower levels. The usurper moves. The skull-wearer brings the blade in the dark. Gorgash. The name hits my mind like a thunderclap. "No," Catherine sobs, tears streaming from her white, sightless eyes. "No, the old one! Run! The one-eyed wolf, trapped in the steel! They corner him in the lower armory! The skull-wearer cuts his throat! The blood, so much blood!" Her body convulses one final time, a violent arch of her spine, and then she collapses. The supernatural strength vanishes. The weight of the vision releases her, dropping her limp and sobbing against my chest. I catch her easily, cradling her shaking form. Her irises return, blown wide and dilated with shock. She buries her face into my chest, weeping hysterically, her body racked with the trauma of the psychic assault. "I'm sorry," she chokes out, her voice broken, reverting back to the terrified valley girl. "I'm sorry. I couldn't stop it. The curse. I'm sorry." She is waiting for the rejection. She is waiting for the monster to throw her away, just as the humans did, now that he has seen the demon inside her head. But I do not push her away. I pull her tighter against my chest, wrapping my arms around her so fiercely I almost bruise her ribs. A wave of fierce, reverent awe washes over me. The humans in the valley are fools. They looked at this incredible creature and saw a curse. They saw a sickness. I am a warlord. I look at her and see the ultimate weapon. The gods have not cursed my mate. They have blessed her. They have given her eyes that pierce the fog of the future. She did not bring doom into my keep. She brought the light that will expose the traitors in the dark.
Chapter 13. Catherine. The silence that follows the vision is heavier than stone. I lie tangled in the damp snowstalker pelts, my chest heaving as I try to pull air into my lungs. My throat is raw from screaming. The psychic storm has passed, leaving my mind stripped bare and my body trembling so violently my teeth clatter. I curl into a tight ball, squeezing my eyes shut. I wait for the blow. I wait for the revulsion. In Mannheim, my visions were a sickness. When the sight took me in the village square as a child, the women would spit on the ground and pull their children away. The guards would strike me with the flats of their swords to make the screaming stop. My own father would lock me in the cellar for days, terrified that the neighbours would burn our house down. The world hated the monster inside my head. And now I have just unleashed that monster in the bed of a warlord. I brace myself for Wulfric to throw me to the floor. I expect him to look at me with the same cold, disgusted eyes that the alderman had when he chained me to the rock. A massive shadow falls over me. I flinch, a pathetic whimper escaping my lips as I shield my face with my bruised hands. Look at me, little cat. The voice is not a roar of anger. It is a deep, vibrating rumble, so low it resonates in my collarbones. It is the voice that anchored me in the dark. Slowly, hesitantly, I lower my arms. Wulfric is leaning over me. The terrifying giant who just took me with a primal, consuming madness is looking down at me with an expression I cannot comprehend. His golden, cat-like eyes are wide, but there is no fear in them. There is no disgust. He is looking at me with pure, burning awe. It is the look a starving man gives to bread. It is the look a priest gives to a god. He reaches out. I tense, but his massive, calloused hand does not strike me. His thick thumb, rough as volcanic stone, gently brushes against my cheek, wiping away the cold sweat and tears. "You are shaking," he murmurs, his touch impossibly tender for hands that can crush iron. "Do not fear the dark, little cat. You are safe here." "I ruined it," I choke out, a fresh wave of tears spilling down my face. "I'm sorry. The curse. I can't control it. It just happens." Wulfric's brow furrows in genuine confusion. "Curse?" "The sight," I whisper, the shame burning hot in my chest. "It's a sickness. It brings doom. My father said I was marked by the dark gods. That's why he offered me to the mountain, so the monsters would eat the curse." The confusion in the warlord's eyes vanishes, replaced instantly by a flare of cold, lethal fury. But the anger is not directed at me. "Your father," Wulfric growls, the silver caps of his tusks gleaming in the dim light, "is a fool. A blind pig rooting in the mud." He shifts on the mattress, sliding his massive arm under my shoulders and pulling me up against his chest. His skin is still radiating that intense, magma-like heat, and the contact immediately begins to soothe my shivering. "Tell me," he commands gently, "how does the sight work? How do you know the movements of the dark?" I rest my head against his heavy pectoral muscle, listening to the steady, monolithic beat of his heart. It is the only thing keeping me grounded. "It comes with touch," I whisper, staring into the flickering shadows of the room. If I brush against a human mind, I see their end. I see their pain. It is just noise, screaming and blood, and it never stops. That is why I had to live alone, because if I touched anyone, I would see how they died. "And when you touch me?" Wulfric asks, his voice dropping to a near inaudible rumble. "Silence," I confess, looking up into his golden eyes. "Except for just now. Just now, I saw the keep. I saw the skull-wearer. Gorgash." "You saw the truth," Wulfric says firmly. He places his massive hand over my heart. "The humans of the valley are weak. They fear what they do not understand. They look at the storm and call it a curse because it ruins their crops. But I am a creature of the mountain, little cat. I know the value of the storm." He tilts my chin up so I am forced to look directly at him. "On Protheka, knowledge is the sharpest blade of all," the warlord explains, his tone shifting from lover to strategist. "To see an ambush before the blades are drawn, to know the mind of a traitor before he speaks. That is not a sickness, that is the ultimate weapon." I stare at him, my breath catching in my throat. The words feel alien. They contradict everything I have ever been told about myself. "But I am weak," I protest weakly. "I am just a human." Wulfric chuckles, a low, rich sound that reverberates through my entire body. "Your flesh is fragile. Your bones are small. But your mind—" He taps my temple gently with his index claw. "Your mind is a fortress. The gods did not curse you, my mate. They blessed you. They sent you to me to be my eyes in the dark." The absolute certainty in his voice shatters the last remnants of my shame. The crushing weight I have carried on my shoulders for 20 years simply evaporates. My father's disgust, the villagers' stones, the iron chains on the offering rock, none of it matters anymore. In the eyes of the most dangerous creature in this frozen world, I am not garbage. I am a prize of incalculable value. I let out a shuddering breath and wrap my arms around his thick neck, burying my face into the crook of his shoulder. I am no longer crying from fear. I am crying from relief. Wulfric holds me for a long time, letting the silence of the tower wash over us. But the peace is temporary. The vision had been specific, and the warlord does not ignore threats to his pack. Slowly, Wulfric disentangles himself from my grip. The skull-wearer thinks he can move in the shadows of my keep, Wulfric says, his golden eyes narrowing as the lethal tactician returns. He thinks to strike at the old wolf rock. He thinks I am blind. Wulfric stands from the bed. The tender beast is gone, replaced by the lord of Clan Ison. He begins to gather his armour from the floor, strapping the heavy, scarred leather plates back over his chest. I must leave the den, Wulfric announces, his tone clipped and efficient. Panic flares in my chest. You are leaving me? I must verify the threat, he explains, pulling on his heavy, spiked boots. If the Underchief moves against Rock, it means a civil war within the clan. I cannot act on a prophecy alone without testing the waters. I must summon my elders. We must weigh the truth of your sight. He reaches for his great cleaver and chains the massive slab of volcanic steel to his back. Stay in the firs, he commands. Rest. The sight drains the body as much as the rut. I will return when the council is concluded. I nod, pulling the white pelts up to my chin. Will they believe you? About my vision? Wulfric stops at the heavy iron door. He looks back at me, a dangerous, possessive smirk touching the corner of his tusked mouth. They will believe, or I will take their heads. You are the warlord's seer now. He ducks his horned head and steps out into the corridor. The heavy door swings shut. I hear the metallic clank of the external lock sliding home, securing me inside. I fall back into the pillows, utterly exhausted. My body aches from the intensity of our mating, and my mind feels bruised from the psychic intrusion. Yet as I stare up at the black stone ceiling, a profound, life-altering sense of peace settles over me. I am locked in a monster's cage, and for the very first time in my life, I am completely safe. From the depths of the darkness of Protheka,
or clawing up from the realms of fantasy,
come the most fearsome beasts you have ever seen.
These monsters are done watching from the shadows.
Now, as they step into the light, something unexpected grips them.
Something even they can't fight off.
Love.
Vampires.
Demons.
Dark elves.
Gods.
Minotaurs. Creatures of light and dark.
They will protect their mates.
Do whatever needs to be done.
Morally grey heroes who will burn the world to protect the women who love them.
10 audiobooks.
Fall into over 60 hours of fantasy romance.
20 ebooks.
Over 1 million words of these brutes who will protect their women.
Even if they might destroy themselves in the process.
Get the immersive Protheka fantasy romance bundle.
For 80% off, right now, dive into Protheka at a once-in-a-lifetime discount.
The first bundle to offer both ebooks and audiobooks on worldsofprotheka.com. Protheka's magic is eternal, and this Romantasy bundle will make it endless.
Chapter 14. Wulfric. The iron vault sits deep in the belly of the mountain, far below the noise and smoke of the great hall. It is a windowless chamber carved directly into the bedrock, its walls reinforced with foot-thick slabs of blackened steel. It is the war room of Clan Ison. Secrets spoken in this room do not escape the stone. I stand at the head of the heavy iron table, my massive hands resting on the cold metal. The heavy door groans open. My 3 loyalists enter the chamber. Scardy, the axe, walks in first. He is silent as a ghost, his heavily scarred face unreadable. He takes his place at my right hand, his eyes scanning the empty room for threats out of sheer habit. Thorgest follows, practically vibrating with energy. The young warrior is massive, his muscles thick with the arrogance of youth. He looks at me with unfiltered worship, his hand already resting on the helm of his sword. He smells blood in the water. Finally, Hrock the Elder enters. He walks with a slight limp, an old wound from the human wars of my father's generation. His single good eye gleams in the dim light of the single torch burning on the wall. He looks at the locked door behind him and then up at me, his scarred brow furrowing. "The shift has barely changed, Jarl," Hrock grunts, leaning his heavy frame against the iron table. "Why are we in the dark?" "Because the dark is where the vipers nest," I rumble, my voice echoing off the steel walls. I look at the three of them, the absolute bedrock of my rule. "Gorgash moves tonight," I announce. The words drop into the silence like anvils. The Underchief plans a coup. He seeks to blind the warlord and take the Iron Throne for himself. Thorgest's eyes widen and a fierce, eager grin splits his face. He draws his blade an inch from its scabbard. "Give the order, warlord. I will bring you his skull." "Patience. Whelp," Scardy grunts, his voice like grinding stones. He looks at me, his tactical mind working behind his cold eyes. "Gorgash has coveted the throne since the winter began. We know this. But why tonight, Jarl? Where does this intelligence come from? My scouts in the lower vents have reported nothing." I straighten up, drawing my full height. The truth of this will test their loyalty more than any blade. "The intelligence did not come from the scouts," I say, my voice steady and absolute. "It came from the tower." Hrock's single eye narrows. "From your quarters. No one enters your quarters but you, Volfric." "It came from the human," I state. The iron vault erupts. Thorgest blinks, his eager grin vanishing into sheer, utter confusion. Scardy crosses his massive arms over his armored chest, his expression hardening into cold, unyielding skepticism. But it is Hrock who reacts with the most violence. The Elder Orc slams his heavy fist onto the iron table, the sound ringing out like a gunshot. His lip curls back, exposing his yellowed, broken tusks in a snarl of pure disgust. "The pet?" Hrock spits the word like poison. "You drag us into the vault. You speak of treason and civil war, based on the whisperings of a valley girl." "She is not a pet," I growl, a low warning vibrating in my chest. "She is human," Hrock roars back, his respect for me overridden by the sheer insult of the claim. "They are weak, Volfric. Their blood is thin. They cannot hold the deep magics of Protheka. They are cattle. You think Gorgash, the most cunning brute in this keep, is going to be exposed by a slave having a bad dream?" "It was not a dream," I counter, taking a step toward the Elder. My shadow falls over him, but he does not back down. Her mind is touched by the sight. She saw the blood on the black stone. She saw the clan divided. Hrock shakes his head, turning his back on me in a rare show of open defiance. "You are rut-blind, Jarl. The girl has warmed your bed, and now her madness is warming your mind." I do not raise my voice. I do not need to. I reach behind my back, unclasp the heavy iron chain, and slam the massive great cleaver onto the center of the table. The volcanic steel shears a gouge into the iron top. The sound is deafening. Silence slams back into the room. Hrock turns back around, his good eye wide. I lean forward, resting my knuckles on the table, and look at each of my commanders. The air grows heavy with the sheer, crushing weight of my presence. "Hear me," I rumble, my voice a tectonic shift of absolute authority. "The magics of this world are ancient. They do not care about the thickness of the blood or the shape of the skull. The gods have marked her. When I touch her, her mind goes silent. When she touches the future, she screams." I look directly at Hrock. "She saw the coup," I tell the Elder, my voice softening just a fraction, laced with a cold, protective rage. "She saw Gorgash leading shadows into the lower armory, and she saw them corner the one-eyed wolf." Hrock freezes. The anger drains out of his scarred face, replaced by a sudden, chilling realization. "The Underchief is targeting you, Hrock," I continue. "He intends to cut the oldest roots of my power first. He intends to butcher the orc who raised me to send a message to the rest of the clan. The humans saw your throat cut. The elder orc touches his neck instinctively, his single eye blinking rapidly. The skepticism begins to fracture. She is the warlord seer, I declare, pulling the cleaver from the table and resting it on my shoulder. I stake my honor and my throne on her word. Do you stand with me, or do you stand with the usurper? Thorgest is the first to kneel. The young warrior drops to one knee, driving the point of his sword into the stone floor. With the warlord, always. Skardi nods slowly. The silent warrior does not question my tactical judgment. If I say the human is a weapon, Skardi accepts it. Finally, Hrock bows his head. The insult to his pride is swallowed by the gravity of the threat to his life and the keep. My apologies, Jarl. If the seer speaks the truth, then we must strike. We slaughter Gorgash and his dogs in their beds, Thorgest suggests eagerly, rising to his feet. No, Skardi says, speaking for the first time. The sound is like gravel in a chute. We all look at the second in command. Skardi taps his scarred temple. To kill an underchief without cause is tyranny, Skardi explains coldly. The clan will fracture. Gorgash has allies. If we strike first, we look like madmen acting on human whispers. We must let Gorgash commit treason in the light. We must catch his blade in the act of swinging for Hrock's throat. Then the execution is legal. The logic is flawless. It is the brutal law of Clan Ison. The lower armory is a labyrinth, Skardi continues, looking at me. It spans the entire west wing. It is filled with shadows, blind corners, and 100 places to hide in ambush. We cannot guard it all without Gorgash noticing and calling off the attack. We need to know the exact ground he will choose. Skardi looks up at me, his cold eyes unblinking. If your seer truly has the sight, Jarl, she must do more than warn us of the storm. She must tell us where the lightning will strike. I need the exact time. I need the exact location. Without that, we are blind. A cold, heavy knot forms in my gut. Skardi is right. A vague warning is useless in a fortress of this size. I need specifics. I need to push the little cat back into the dark waters of her curse to fish out the missing pieces of the trap. I will get the answers, I swear, turning toward the heavy iron door. Prepare your armor. Sharpen your steel. I will return before the next shift. I push the heavy door open and stride out of the iron vault. My heart is hammering against my ribs. It is not the thrill of the coming battle. It is fear. Fear for Hrock, and fear of what I must ask my mate to do. I march quickly up the dark stone corridors, my heavy boots thundering up the stairwells toward the tower. I need her. The clan needs her. The fate of the keep now rests entirely in the hands of the fragile human waiting in my bed.
Chapter 15. Catherine. The heavy iron door crashes open, the sound rebounding off the black stone walls like a thunderclap. I bolt upright in the furs, my heart hammering against my ribs. Wulfric fills the doorway, his massive chest heaving beneath his scarred leather armor. His golden eyes scan the room instantly, a predator checking the safety of his den before locking onto me. "The pieces!" he demands, his voice a low, urgent rumble as he crosses the cavernous room in 3 massive strides. The elders demand the ground. Where do they strike? The sheer intensity of his presence pulls the last, lingering fragments of the vision to the surface of my mind. I don't need to search for the answers. They are burned into the back of my eyelids. The deep magics of Protheka have left a map in my head, drawn in blood and shadow. "The lower armory," I say, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. I pull the crimson silk tighter around my shoulders. It is deep. Too deep for the torches to burn clean. There are rows of iron weapon racks making a maze. "The west wing," Wulfric growls, nodding. "The blind spots. Skardi was right. When?" Now, I whisper. The realization hits me with the force of a physical blow. The vision wasn't a warning for tomorrow. It is happening tonight. The war horns, the shift change, they are using the noise of the boots in the corridors to mask their approach. Gorgash has cornered him, Wulfric. The trap is springing right now. The effect of my words on the warlord is instantaneous and terrifying. The cold, calculating tactician vanishes. The tender lover who wiped away my tears is erased. A blinding berserker rage takes over his massive frame. I see the moment the beast slips its leash. The gold in his eyes seems to catch fire. His thick lips curl back, exposing his silver-capped tusks in a snarl of pure, unrestrained violence. The thought of the elder who raised him being butchered in the dark sends a shockwave of fury through the room that makes the hair on my arms stand up. Wulfric does not say goodbye. He does not offer comfort. He moves with a reckless, terrifying speed that defies his massive size. He lunges for the wall, grabbing the heavy chain of his great cleaver. He doesn't even bother to strap it to his back. He grips the hilt of the massive volcanic steel slab in his right hand, his knuckles turning white, the muscles in his arm bulging against the leather. He spins on his heel and storms out of the tower. "Wulfric!" I call out, but my voice is swallowed by the sheer violence of his departure. He breaches the threshold and disappears into the corridor, rushing for the stairwell to save his elder. In his haste, he grabs the heavy iron door and pulls it shut behind him with a deafening boom. The silence that follows is absolute. I sit on the bed, the adrenaline surging through my veins. A fierce, wild pride blooms in my chest. I did it. I didn't just survive the vision, I weaponized it. I gave the Lord of the Mountain the edge he needed to protect his pack. I wait for the familiar metallic clank of the heavy external deadbolt sliding home to secure my cage. It never comes. Swept up in the intoxicating rush of the moment, the missing sound does not register in my brain. My mind is already racing ahead to the aftermath. I am picturing Wulfric standing victorious over the usurper. I am picturing him coming back through that door, his blood running hot from the slaughter, looking at me not as a pet, but as his seer, his mate. But as the adrenaline begins to fade, a new, unpleasant sensation takes its place. The weight of the vision finally hits me. Wulfric is right. The sight drains the marrow from my bones. My limbs feel like leaden weights, and a dull, rhythmic throb begins to pulse behind my eyes, matching the beat of my heart. When I try to shift, my muscles protest with a deep, shaky soreness, as if I have just run a marathon through the snow. I feel filthy. The sweat generated by the psychic onslaught of the vision is not like normal sweat. It clings to my skin like a thin layer of oil. It smells strange, metallic and sharp, like copper left out in the rain. It is the physical residue of the curse, the lingering ash of the dark magic that burned through my nervous system. I cannot meet my warlord looking like this. I cannot welcome the victor of Eisenkeep into our bed covered in the foul stench of my own trauma. I slide out from beneath the tangled snowstalker pelts, but the moment my bare feet hit the warm black stone of the floor, the room tilts. I have to catch myself against the heavy iron bedpost, my knuckles white as I wait for the dizziness to pass. My breath comes in shallow, taxed hitches. I force myself forward, every step a battle against the lethargy pulling at my heels. I reach down and grab the hem of the oversized crimson Naga silk tunic. With a slow, shaky effort, I pull the heavy, expensive garment over my head and drop it onto the furs. I stand completely naked in the cavernous room. My skin is flushed, marked with the faint pink impressions of the sheets and the darker, lingering bruises of the iron shackles. My body aches with a deep, thoroughly used soreness from the warlord's massive weight. Every inch of me feels sensitive, raw, and incredibly exposed. I walk toward the far, shadowed corner of the room, heading for the thick curtain of white steam rising from the sunken geothermal pool. Each stride feels heavy, my knees threatening to buckle, but the lure of the water keeps me moving. The bubbling turquoise water looks incredibly inviting. I need the heat. I need the deep earth minerals and the resin herbs to scrub the memory of the screaming out of my pores. I want to be clean and soft for him. I step up to the edge of the black stone basin. The steam billows up, instantly wrapping my naked body in a warm, fragrant embrace. It smells of sweet pine and rich earth. I don't get in immediately. I drop to my knees by the pool, leaning forward over the water. I cup my hands together and dip them into the boiling depths. The water is scalding, just the way Wulfric likes it. I bring the water up to my face, splashing the heat over my cheeks and neck, washing away the dried tears and the metallic sweat. I let out a long, shuddering sigh of relief. The warmth is divine. I lean down again, reaching for another handful of water to wash my chest. That is when the air behind me changes. The shift is subtle at first, almost imperceptible. The sweet, herbal scent of the steam is suddenly cut by something sharp. I pause, my hands hovering over the turquoise water, my brow furrowing in confusion. I take a breath. A foul, heavy odour rolls over me. It is the unmistakable choking stench of rotten eggs. Sulphur. It is the raw, toxic smell of the deep, lower mines, the kind of stench that clings to the boots and clothes of the workers who never see the sun. Mixed with the sulphur is the heavy, aggressive musk of unwashed orcish sweat. The hairs on my neck stand up. The silence of the tower is suddenly broken by the faint sound of heavy, laboured breathing. It is not the rhythmic, deep breathing of my warlord. It is wet, excited. My heart stops. A wave of absolute, paralysing terror crashes over me, turning the water in my cupped hands to ice. The door didn't lock. The realisation hits me with devastating clarity. In his blind rage to protect his clan, the warlord made a fatal mistake. He left the cage unlocked, and someone from the deep dark of the keep had been waiting in the shadows of the corridor for the monster to leave. I open my mouth to scream. Before I can make a sound, a massive shadow falls over the bubbling water. Brutal, filthy hands, as large as Wulfric's but lacking any of his care, clamp down onto my naked hips. Iron-hard fingers dig viciously into my unprotected flesh, bruising the skin instantly. Go and get me some wet pet hole. A damp, guttural chuckle rumbles right against my ear, and I feel the massive rock hard press against my buttocks.
Chapter 16. Wulfric. The lower armory is a graveyard of iron. It sits in the deepest, coldest belly of the fortress, a cavernous grid of endless black stone pillars and towering weapon racks that stretch into the dark like the ribs of some colossal, long-dead leviathan. The air down here is stagnant, heavy with the metallic tang of rust, old blood, and the sulphurous rot of the deep mines below. The torches are few and spaced too far apart, leaving vast, disorienting pools of absolute shadow. It is a place the clan avoids unless necessary. It is the perfect place to bury a secret, or an elder. I do not run down the final damp stone corridor. The rage boiling in my blood is blinding, a white-hot furnace demanding immediate and total release. But I am a veteran of 100 campaigns. I know that rage without control is just noise. I force the berserker down beneath a sheet of icy tactical focus. I become the stalker. I move through the heavy iron doorway in complete silence, the shadows of the immense room instantly swallowing my massive frame. Deep in the mountain above me, the heavy midnight shift horns begin to blow. The low, mournful resonance vibrates through the stone floor, a sound that usually signals the changing of the guard. Tonight, it masks the sound of boots and shifting armor. It is the exact moment my seer predicted. I look down the central aisle of the iron maze. Hrock is there. The one-eyed elder is walking his routine inspection, a thankless task he took on to give his aging bones purpose. His back is to the shadows, completely unaware of the trap closing around him. He is checking the inventory of the pikes, muttering complaints to himself about the damp air rotting the wooden hafts and the laziness of the quartermaster. He represents everything Gorgash despises: the old ways, loyalty to the warlord, and honor. 4 shadows detach themselves from the absolute darkness behind the weapon racks. They are dressed in light leather armor, the crest of Clan Ison stripped from their shoulders. Their faces are obscured by the gloom, but the glint of the dying torches catches on the long, wicked daggers in their hands. They move in perfect, practiced unison, stepping out directly behind the elder. The impossible, terrifying accuracy of the human's vision hits me with a final jolt of awe. She saw this. She saw the exact layout of a room she has never visited, the exact number of blades, at the exact second of the strike. The awe vanishes in a microsecond, instantly incinerated by absolute violence. I do not shout a warning. A warlord does not bark. He bites. I lunge from the darkness like a demon unleashed from the underworld. The distance between us evaporates in 3 massive, thundering strides. The lead assassin raises his dagger to plunge it into Hrock's exposed neck. I intercept the strike. My bare, scarred gauntlet wraps around the assassin's wrist, stopping the blade inches from the elder's skin. I squeeze. The bones of the assassin's arm shatter instantly in my grip with a sickening, wet crunch. Hrock spins around, his single eye blowing wide in shock as I step past him, becoming an immovable mountain of leather and steel between the elder and his executioners. The assassins barely have time to register my presence before I unleash the Great Cleaver. I do not swing for precision. I swing for obliteration. The massive slab of volcanic steel shears through the stale air with a sound like tearing canvas. It cuts through the first assassin's leather armor, through his ribs, and through the heavy iron weapon rack behind him in a single, devastating arc. Sparks shower the dark stone. The second assassin tries to back away, stumbling in the dark, but the backswing of the heavy blade catches him squarely in the chest, crushing his sternum and sending his broken body flying back into the shadows. The remaining 2 assassins freeze in pure, paralyzing terror. They expected an old, tired elder. They found the of the mountain. I stand over the ruin of their vanguard, my great cleaver dripping with fresh blood that steams in the cold air. A low, vibrating growl rumbles from my chest, echoing off the iron racks like the warning of a subterranean beast. From behind a thick stone pillar 20 feet away, Gorgash steps into the dim light. The underchief is fully armored, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. But he does not draw it. His face is twisted in a mask of absolute, paralyzing shock. He looks at the dead assassins, at Hrock, and then up at me. I watch the color drain from his green skin. He realizes in a single, crushing second that his secret coup has been exposed, preempted, and completely destroyed. "Treachery!" Hrock hisses behind me. The sound of steel rasping against leather fills the air as the old wolf finally draws his blade, the reality of the betrayal sinking in. "You filth! You target the pack from the inside." I take a slow, heavy step toward Gorgash. The spiked heels of my boots echo like war drums. The remaining 2 assassins look at their master, look at my blade, and drop their daggers. They back away into the dark, abandoning their leader to save their own skins. Gorgash does not run. He knows there is no outrunning the warlord in the deep. I cross the distance, grab him by the throat plate of his armor, and slam him back against the cold stone pillar with my free hand. The impact knocks the wind out of him. I press the heavy, blood-slicked edge of the great cleaver directly against his throat. The physical threat to my keep is neutralized. The usurper is cornered, but as I look down into Gorgash's eyes, I don't see the terror I expect. Defeated, surrounded by the corpses of his failed rebellion, knowing he is a dead man, the underchief smiles. It is a bloody, spiteful, triumphant smile that exposes his yellowed tusks. "You are fast, Jarl," Gorgash rasps, the edge of my blade drawing a thin line of blood on his thick neck. "Too fast for your own good." "Skardi will execute you in the courtyard at dawn," I growl, pressing the blade harder against his trachea. "Your skull will join the others on the wall, and the crows will feast on your eyes." "Perhaps," Gorgash laughs, a wet, rattling sound that grates against my nerves. "But you ran so fast to save the old dog. You left the new woman unguarded." My blood turns to ice. "Ivor," Gorgash taunts, his eyes gleaming with malicious victory. "The brute was not assigned to the armory tonight. He went up the stairs to test the lock on your tower." The words hit me harder than any blade ever could. They pierce through the armor, through the muscle, straight into my soul. My mind flashes back to the tower. I see myself grabbing the cleaver from the wall, consumed by the urgency of the vision. I see myself charging out into the corridor. I see the heavy iron door slamming shut behind me in my fury. And then I hear the sickening hollow silence of the memory, the missing clank. I didn't slide the deadbolt. I left the cage unlocked. I left my fragile, naked mate completely defenseless against a monster who lives to break things. A cold, absolute terror grips me, a fear so profound it eclipses any rage I have ever felt in my century of life. I release Gorgash, throwing his heavy armored body to the stone floor at Hrok's feet. "Bind him!" I roar at the elder, my voice cracking with an unfamiliar, desperate panic. I do not wait to see Hrok obey. I spin around and sprint for the stairwell. I abandon my elder, my captured enemy, and the safety of the keep. Driven by a blinding, agonizing need, I run up the mountain to undo my mistake.
Chapter 17. Catherine. The brutal hands on my hips do not feel like Wulfric's. My warlord's touch is overwhelming, heavy and absolute. But there is always a core of profound, almost reverent care beneath his immense strength. When Wulfric holds me, it is to anchor me. Where his scars tell stories of honourable battles, the calluses scraping my skin now feel like neglected, jagged stone. They are the hands of a butcher. The hands clamped onto my naked flesh now are just cruel. Thick fingers caked in grime dig viciously into the soft tissue of my waist, bruising the skin instantly. The moment his skin bites into mine, the sight triggers like a physical blow. A high-pitched ringing drowns out the sound of the pool, and the world begins to dissolve into that terrifying, static-filled grey. I feel the onset of the seizure, the locking of my jaw, the rolling of my eyes, but I fight it with a primal, jagged desperation. I cannot go under. If I vanish into a vision now, I will wake up to find myself ruined. I bite my tongue until I taste copper, the sharp pain grounding me, forcing the grey fog back into the corners of my mind.
This scene is about to get too steamy for this platform's comfort. And as much as we'd love to keep going, their guidelines say we need to stop here.
To continue releasing these free audiobooks on this platform, we've got to play by the rules.
But the passion doesn't end here.
Visit worldsofprotheka.com to hear the full, uncut version of this fantasy romance, and every daring moment that YouTube can't handle.
Use code YouTube30 for 30% off unabridged audiobooks in the Worlds of Protheka.
Don't let YouTube hold you back. Immerse yourself in a world of magic, danger, and unfiltered passion.
Protheka's magic is eternal.
Listen unabridged and you'll never want to go back. I scramble away from the pool on my hands and knees, my wet feet slipping on the tiles. I run across the cavernous room toward the great hearth, reaching into the rack of heavy iron fire tools. My fingers wrap around the thick, cold shaft of the fire poker. The tip is buried deep in the coals, glowing a lethal, dull red. I yank the heavy weapon free, scattering ash across the hearth. I spin around to face the centre of the room. Ivor is still on the floor, howling, blindly swiping his massive fists through the air as he tries to find me. I stand my ground. The heat radiating from the iron warms my shivering chest. For the first time in my life, I am not looking for a corner to hide in. I watch the thrashing giant. He is bleeding. He is broken. I watch him, and I realise the most terrifying thing of all. I am not afraid. I am angry. Naked, bruised, and dripping wet, I raise the glowing iron poker between myself and the blinded beast. I am not the alderman's weak, cursed daughter anymore. I am the warlord's mate. I am the seer of Ison Keep. And the next monster who touches me will burn.
Chapter 18. Volfric. I do not remember the stairs. I take the winding, treacherous stone steps of the keep 3 at a time, my massive boots slamming against the rock with enough force to crack the granite slabs beneath my feet. My lungs burn, starved for air in the thin mountain atmosphere. My heart hammers against my ribs, a frantic, sickening rhythm of pure terror that I have not felt in over a century of blood and war. I'm a creature built for devastation. I've walked through hails of arrows, waded through shield walls, and laughed in the face of Duergar kings. But on these stairs, I am powerless. My immense strength, the weight of my armor, the killing edge of my blade, none of it matters if I am not fast enough. My size feels like a curse. I am too heavy, too slow. The berserker rage that carried me through the armory, the cold satisfaction of cornering Gorgash, is completely gone. It has been extinguished by a suffocating, crushing wave of guilt. I failed her. My mind is a reel of horrific, torturous images. Ivor is a brute from the lower vents. He spends his days breathing sulfur, crushing stone, and enforcing Gorgash's will with his fists. He's not a warrior. He has no mind for politics, no honor of the old ways, only the base, violent urges of a sub-beast. The thought of his filthy hands on her pale skin, the thought of his monstrous weight pressing down on her fragile human frame, makes me want to vomit up my own heart. I imagine the sound of her screaming for me, screaming for the monster who promised to protect her, while I was buried in the dark playing warlord. I reach the final landing of the tower. The corridor is empty. The silence coming from the top of the tower is deafening, worse than the sound of any battle. I brace myself for the sight of a tragedy. I expect to find her broken in the furs, bleeding and weeping from a trauma she will never recover from. I expect to find the light in her gray eyes permanently extinguished, her spirit crushed under the boot of my own negligence. The smell hits me first. It is not the coppery scent of fresh blood. It is the acrid, sickening stench of burned flesh and boiled sulfur. I reach the heavy iron door. It is already ajar, left open by the intruder. I burst through the threshold, the heavy great cleaver gripped so tightly in my right hand that the leather-wrapped hilt groans. I'm ready to slaughter whatever I find inside. I'm ready to burn my own castle to the ground. I freeze. The tower is not a scene of tragedy. It is a scene of war. A high, agonizing wail fills the cavernous room. Ivor is on the black stone floor near the geothermal pool, writhing like a crushed worm. His hands are clamped over his face, his skin blistered red and peeling, screaming blindly at the ceiling. Steam rises from his ruined face, mixing with the cold air of the tower. But it is not the dying beast that holds my gaze. Standing in the middle of the room, back toward the hearth, is the little cat. She is completely naked, her pale skin dripping with water and sweat that glistens in the firelight. She is trembling, her chest heaving, but she is not cowering in the corner. Her feet are planted firmly on the black stone. In her small hands she holds the heavy iron fire poker, the tip glowing a lethal, dull red from the coals. She is brandishing it like a seasoned warrior holding the line against a siege. She did not break. She fought back. My golden eyes sweep over her, assessing every inch of her for damage. Then I see the marks. Dark, vicious purple bruises are already blooming on the soft skin of her hips, the exact size and shape of Ivor's filthy fingers. The sight of them is an offense against the very order of the universe. It is a desecration of something sacred. The sight of another male's violent touch on my mate snaps the final, fraying thread of my restraint. The panic and the guilt vanish, consumed instantly by a cold, absolute abyss of territorial fury. The room seems to tilt. The blood roaring in my ears goes deathly quiet. I do not speak. I do not roar. A warlord does not share his rage with dead men. I step forward. My spiked boots make a heavy, slow thud against the stone. Ivor hears the footsteps. The brute stops thrashing for a second, turning his ruined, blistered face toward the sound. The skin around his eyes is sloughing off. Who is there? He whimpers, the arrogance of the predator completely replaced by the pathetic terror of the prey. I cross the distance in 3 silent strides. I raise the great cleaver high above my head, gripping the hilt with both hands. The muscles in my arms and back locked to their absolute maximum limit, every ounce of power I possess focused into a single point of delivery. I channel the terror of the stairs, the guilt of the unlocked door, and the pure, unadulterated hatred for the thing on the floor into the volcanic steel. Ivor senses the shift in the air pressure. He senses the shadow of the mountain falling over him. He screams. I bring the steel down. It is not a tactical strike. It is an execution of pure overkill. The massive blade cleaves through Ivor's shoulder, shearing through the thick leather armor, through the heavy collarbone, and deep into the ribcage, splitting the brute open down to his heart. Bones shatter like dry twigs under the force of the blow. The impact is so violent the blade bites 3 inches into the solid black stone floor beneath him, sending a shower of orange sparks into the air that hiss against the pooling blood. Ivor's scream is cut instantly. I rip the blade free with a wet, sickening crunch. The brute's massive body collapses onto the tiles, effectively severed in 2, a tide of dark orcish blood instantly flooding the floor of the den. I stand over the corpse, the heavy steel dripping in my hands, breathing in the scent of the slaughter. The tower is secure. The threat is dead. No one will ever touch her again.
Chapter 19. Catherine. The heavy volcanic steel drops from Wulfric's hands. It hits the black stone floor with a deafening clang that echoes off the vaulted ceiling, a jarring sound that shatters the ringing silence left behind by the brute's death scream. Wulfric does not look at the ruin of the monster on the floor. He does not check to ensure the threat is neutralized. He turns his back on the carnage immediately, his golden eyes locked onto me with a desperate, singular focus. He crosses the distance between us in 2 massive strides, grabbing the heavy snowstalker pelt from the chair by the hearth. As he reaches me, I see it. The adrenaline that fueled his execution of the brute is receding, and in its wake, the great warlord of Icenkeep is shaking. His massive frame, caked in the blood of the armory fight and the steam of the cold night air, is trembling violently. He wraps the heavy white fur around my shivering naked body, his large hands incredibly gentle, terrified of pressing his blood-slicked gauntlets against my skin. "I am sorry," he whispers. The words catch in his throat, rough, broken, and completely foreign. It is the first time I have ever heard him apologize. The monster who has slaughtered armies, crushed rebellions, and stared down kings without blinking is completely humbled by the sight of the dark purple bruises blooming on my pale hips. He pulls me into his chest, burying his face into the crown of my wet hair. He inhales the scent of me like a drowning man taking his first breath of air. He is waiting for the collapse. I can feel the tension in his muscles, braced to catch me. He is waiting for the sobbing to start, for the fragile human mind to shatter under the weight of the violence I was just forced to endure. He thinks I am broken. He thinks my spirit has been crushed by the brutality of his world. But I do not weep. The tears do not come. Instead, as the warmth of the fur and the absolute security of his embrace seep into my bones, a strange, profound calm settles over me. My fingers uncurl. I drop the heavy iron poker. It clatters to the floor, the red-hot tip sizzling as it meets the wet stone, sending a puff of steam into the air. I reach my hands up from beneath the furs, but not to push him away in fear. I cup his heavy, scarred jaw, my thumbs brushing against his coarse skin. My touch is firm, anchoring him, grounding the panicked warlord in the present. I pull back to look at him. His golden eyes search my face frantically for the ghost of the terrified girl from the valley. But that girl is gone. My grey eyes are not wide with terror. They are clear, sharp, and burning with a fierce, wild light I have never felt inside myself before. The fear that defined my entire life in Mannheim, the cowering from my father, the shrinking from the villagers, the terror of the chain, has been burned away in the fire of the mountain. I'm okay, I say, my voice remarkably steady, ringing with a truth that surprises even me. I look past his massive shoulder, staring down at the dead orc on the floor, and then at the iron poker at my feet. The metallic smell of blood is thick in the air, but I do not flinch. I look at the corpse with the cold, detached assessment of a survivor. He didn't hurt me, Wulfric, I tell him, turning my gaze back to his stunned face. A flush of pure, unadulterated pride rises in my cheeks, hot and thrilling. I fought him. I made him scream. A physical jolt goes through Wulfric's chest. The words hit him like a bolt of lightning. I see the instant his perspective shifts. He realizes I am not broken. The violence of his world did not crush me, it forged me. The helpless human the alderman chained to the rock is dead. In his arms stands a creature of the mountain, a survivor who looked a monster in the eye, stood her ground, and burned him. The suffocating guilt in Wulfric's eyes evaporates, instantly replaced by a wave of profound, overwhelming possessive pride. His chest swells beneath my hands. He crushes me to his chest, burying his face in my neck. A deep, rumbling purr starts in the base of his throat, an ancient, primal, orcish sound that moves through my entire body. It is a sound of absolute approval, reserved only for a mate of equal strength. He kisses the top of my head, over and over, worshipping the iron I just found in my spine. Heavy, urgent footsteps echo from the stone corridor outside, breaking the sacred quiet of the tower. Skadi appears in the open doorway, his sword drawn and dripping with dark blood. The second in command halts on the threshold, his chest heaving from the fight below. His cold, calculating eyes sweep the room instantly, taking in the scene. It is a tableau of total devastation. He sees the dead brute cleaved in two. He sees the massive pool of blood soaking into the rugs. He sees the iron poker still glowing on the floor next to the geothermal pool. And then he sees me, wrapped in the warlord's arms, looking at the slaughter without an ounce of fear. Jarl! Skadi grunts, lowering his blade, his voice thick with a new, strange tone. Gorgash is in chains in the lower hold. Thorgest holds the armory. The coop is crushed. Skadi looks at me. For the first time since I arrived at the keep, there is no skepticism, no hostility, no contempt for my species in the warrior's face. He looks at the iron poker, the blistered, scalded skin of the dead assassin, and then back to my eyes. He connects the dots. He realizes what I did before the warlord arrived. The second in command bows his head to me. It is a subtle, distinct gesture of absolute respect among orcs, reserved only for warriors who have proven their mettle in combat. The seer saved the keep, Skadi states simply, his voice echoing in the large room, and defended the den. The validation washes over me. I didn't just survive, I earned my place. Wulfric looks at his commander, and I feel the reality of the night settle over him like a heavy mantle. His grip on me tightens, possessive and absolute. I was a fool, Wulfric rumbles, his voice vibrating against my chest. He is speaking to Skadi, but his eyes are fixed on the open doorway, looking out into the dark. I thought I could keep her as my secret. I thought locking her in the highest tower, away from the eyes of the clan, would keep the dark at bay. He looks down at me, his golden eyes blazing with a new, terrifying clarity. But secrets in Clan Ison are targets, he continues, his voice growing harder, the king returning to his throne. In the shadows, she is vulnerable. As long as she is a mystery, as long as she is just the human pet, she will be hunted by every ambitious rat in the mountain who wants to strike at my heart. He pulls me closer, adjusting the heavy white fur around my shoulders. A cage is not enough, Wulfric declares. The only way to ensure her absolute safety is to make touching her an act of war against the entire pack. Prepare the courtyard, Wulfric commands Skadi, his voice echoing with the absolute finality of the law. Hang the traitors at dawn for the clan to see. I want their bodies left for the crows. It will be done, warlord, Skadi nods, accepting the brutal order without hesitation. And Skadi, Wulfric adds, his golden eyes locking onto mine, holding me captive. My breath hitches. I sense the massive shift in his intent before he even speaks the words. The air in the room becomes electric. Tell the hornblowers to sound the assembly, Wulfric declares, making a decision that I know is unprecedented in the history of Clan Ison. He brushes a strand of wet hair from my cheek. Tomorrow, I do not just punish the traitors. Tomorrow I claim the human. Before the gods and the entire horde, she will be named as my mate and my seer. My heart skips a beat. The shadows are gone. The hiding is over. Tomorrow I step into the light. This huge orc brings out the animal in me.
In a world where humans have been driven underground, living like rats is the only way to stay safe from the marauding orcs.
All my life, my only job has been to make sure I have enough to eat.
These orcs of the Burning Sun clan will vow to keep their human mates safe.
There is a nobleness to these giant savages, alpha male warriors who will protect their women at all costs.
Get this complete series of books following the Burning Sun clan for 70% off. Each book is a full-length monster romance that features a giant orc with eyes for his beloved, curvy human. Happily ever after guaranteed.
Protheka's magic is eternal.
This bundle will show you that size really does matter. Chapter 20. Wulfric. The sun rises over Isenkeep like a bleeding wound, painting the gray snow in streaks of pale crimson. The courtyard is silent. 500 orcs stand in formation, their breath misting in the freezing dawn air. They form a square of black iron and scarred leather, their eyes fixed on the center of the yard. I stand over the traitor. Gorgash is on his knees in the slush. His armor has been stripped, leaving him shivering in his tunic. His hands are bound behind his back with heavy chains. He does not beg. He knows the law of the mountain. He looks up at me, his lip curled in a final defiant sneer. "Do it, Jarl!" he spits, his voice ragged. "Send me to the ice hell. I will keep a seat warm for you." I do not give him the satisfaction of a speech. I do not offer him a warrior's death. I raise the great cleaver. The volcanic steel gleams dull red in the morning light. With a single fluid motion, I bring the blade down. There is a wet, heavy thud as steel shears through bone and meat. The head rolls into the mud. The body collapses. A ripple of tension breaks through the ranks of the clan. They watch the steam rise from the fresh blood. I wipe the blade on Gorgash's tunic and turn to face my soldiers. My voice is not a shout. It is a landslide, deep and inescapable. "The rat is dead," I rumble, my gaze sweeping over the faces of the elders who doubted me. "He sought to blind me. He sought to butcher Hrock in the dark." I point the tip of the cleaver toward the high window of the tower, where a small, pale silhouette stands watching. "You called her a pet," I snarl, challenging them. "You called her a curse. But while you slept, the human watched. She saw the knife in the dark when you were blind. She is the reason your elder still draws breath." Hrock standing in the front row with a bandage around his arm, nods solemnly. The gesture ripples through the crowd. Tonight, I declare, the finality of the order echoing off the stone walls. We feast the victory. And tonight, I claim her, not as a slave, but as the warlord's seer. The clan strikes their breastplates, a single deafening crash of approval. But before the echo dies, a new sound cuts through the morning air. Boom! It is the deep, mournful resonance of the great horns at the valley gate. It is not the staccato blast of an alarm. It is the long, sustained note of arrival. Scardy steps up to my side, his hand on his sword. More traitors? No, I say, squinting at the gate as the heavy timber doors begin to groan open. That is a northern call. A column of riders pours into the courtyard. They are not Clan Eason. Their armor is mismatched. Plate stolen from human knights, furs from the southern wastes, spiked pauldrons from the Duergar deep holds. They are mercenaries, wandering killers who sell their steel to the highest bidder. At their head rides a monster. He is as tall as I am, his shoulders broad enough to block out the sun. His beard is braided with gold rings and the finger bones of his enemies. He slides off his massive war boar with a grace that belies his size, his boots crunching heavily into the snow. A grin splits his scarred face, revealing a row of iron teeth. "Wulfric!" he roars, opening his arms wide. "I heard you were killing rats. I thought I'd come see if there was any meat left on the bones." The tension in my chest uncoils. "Haldor," I greet him, stepping forward to clasp his forearm in the warrior's grip. "You ugly bastard. You're far from the gold roads." Haldor laughs, a booming sound that shakes the icicles from the eaves. "The south is boring, brother. Peace is bad for business. I smelled blood in the wind and followed it north." He looks at the headless corpse of Gorgash and whistles. "Clean cut. You haven't lost your edge, Jarl. The desk hasn't made you soft yet." "I'm glad you're here," I admit, and I mean it. After the deception of my own underchief, seeing Haldor, a simple creature of violence and coin, feels like a balm. We fought back to back in the Ashlands for a decade. I trust his greed more than I trust most men's honor. My hall is yours. My fires are hot. And your larder? Haldor grins. Full, I promise. We feast tonight, for the victory, and for the arrival of the Iron Company. Haldor slaps my shoulder, turning to bark orders at his lieutenant to stable the beasts. As he turns back, his gaze drifts upward. He freezes. He is looking at the tower. Catherine has stepped out onto the high stone balcony. The wind whips her hair around her face, and even from this distance, she looks starkly, painfully beautiful against the black stone. Haldor's smile changes. The warmth evaporates, replaced by a cold, appraising glint. It is the look of a wolf spotting a lamb separated from the flock. By the dead gods, Haldor murmurs, licking his lips. That is a fine thing. I stiffen, stepping between him and his line of sight. She is the seer I spoke of. Haldor looks at me, his iron teeth flashing in a smirk that doesn't quite reach his eyes. A seer? That tiny scrap of meat? He laughs, but the sound is darker now. Come now, Wulfric. We are brothers. You can tell me. Since when does the butcher of Eisen keep such delicate pets? She is not a pet, I state, my voice dropping an octave. She is the warlord's mate. Haldor holds my gaze for a second too long. Then he shrugs, clapping me on the back again, but the camaraderie feels thinner than before. Of course, Jarl, he says, his eyes sliding back toward the balcony one last time. But be careful. A man who hoards too much gold eventually gets robbed. He walks past me toward the great hall, shouting for wine. I stand in the cold courtyard, watching my friend's back. The traitor Gorgash is dead, but as I look at Haldor, a new, uneasy weight settles in my gut. I have invited a wolf into the sheepfold.
Chapter 21. Catherine. The great hall of Eisenkeep is a furnace of noise and gluttony. Huge circular fire pits roar in the room, sending sparks drifting up into the blackened rafters. The air is thick enough to chew, heavy with the scent of roasting boar, spilled ale, and the musk of 500 orcs celebrating survival. Drums beat a rhythm that vibrates in the stone floor, a chaotic, primal pulse that seems to sync with my own heartbeat. I sit at the high table, elevated above the horde. I am no longer wearing the simple tunic of a captive. Tonight, Wulfric has dressed me in the ceremonial garb of a clan matriarch. Heavy, silver-tipped furs drape over my shoulders, pinning me to the chair with their weight. A gorget of hammered silver rests against my collarbones, cold and heavy. I feel like an imposter. I feel small in the oversized chair, surrounded by giants who could snap my spine with a hug. But I do not lower my gaze. I keep my chin lifted, staring out at the sea of tusks and scarred faces. I survived the vision. I survived the assassin in the tower. I earned this seat. Wulfric sits to my right, a dark, brooding mountain of silence amidst the revelry. His hand rests on my thigh beneath the table, his thumb tracing slow, possessive circles against the fabric of my dress. It is a tether, grounding me in the chaos. To my left sits the guest, Haldor. The mercenary captain is a terrifying wall of noise. He drinks from a tankard the size of a bucket, wine spilling into his braided beard as he bellows laughter at his own stories. He is charismatic, I will give him that. He holds the nearby elders captive with tales of southern wars and golden cities. But every time the laughter dies down, his eyes slide sideways. They are dark, glassy eyes, rimmed with red. They do not look at my face. They crawl over my throat, my chest, and the bare skin of my arms. It is a look I know well. It is the look the men in the village tavern used to give me when my father wasn't looking. It is a look of consumption. "More wine!" Haldor roars, slamming his tankard down. A servant scrambles to refill it. Skadi appears by the dais. The second in command looks grim, a stark contrast to the celebration. He leans in, whispering urgently into Wulfric's ear. I feel Wulfric tense beside me. The soothing motion of his thumb stops. "Now?" Wulfric grumbles, his voice a low rumble of annoyance. "The lower vents, Jarl." Skadi presses, his voice tight. "The grate is loose. We cannot leave it until morning." Wulfric sighs, the sound like a bellows. He turns to me, his golden eyes filled with apology. "I must go. The mountain has old bones that need tending. I will return before the meat is finished." "I'll be fine," I say, forcing a smile I don't feel. Wulfric stands, his massive shadow falling away from me. The loss of his physical presence is instant and jarring. The warmth is gone. The shield is removed. He descends the dais with Skadi, disappearing into the press of bodies in the hall. The moment he is gone, the air around the high table changes. Haldor shifts his massive bulk. The wood of his chair groans as he turns fully toward me. The boisterous, friendly mask slides off his face, replaced by a wet, slurry sneer. He leans into my personal space. He smells of stale wine, old blood, and something sharp and chemical, like lye. "So," he rumbles, switching from the guttural orcish tongue to a broken, mocking version of common. The butcher of Isen has gone soft, leaving such a sweetmeat, unguarded. I stiffen, staring straight ahead. The Jarl has business to attend to. "Business," Haldor scoffs. He picks up a grape skin from his plate and flicks it at me. It bounces off my shoulder. "A warlord's business is war, not playing house with a valley girl." He leans closer, his hot, sour breath washing over my cheek. "You are out of place here, little thing." He purrs, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "These mountain orcs, they are dull. They live in caves. They do not know how to treat a prize. but a mercenary. I have seen the world. I have silks in my tent softer than these heavy skins. I have wines sweeter than this vinegar. My stomach turns. I am not interested in your tent, Captain. No? Haldor chuckles, a dark, vibrating sound. You think you belong here, sitting in the Jarl's chair? You are a pet, girl, and pets get lonely when the master is away. I turn my head slowly to look him in the eye. I channel the cold, hard anger that helped me burn Ivor. I am not a pet, I say, my voice cutting through the noise like a razor. I am the seer of Ison Keep, and you are a guest. Do not forget your place. The smile vanishes from Haldor's face. His eyes narrow. The rejection has stung his pride. My place? He snarls. He stands up abruptly, his chair screeching against the stone. Before I can react, his hand shoots out. His fingers are thick as sausages and hard as iron. He grabs my wrist, his grip crushing the delicate bones. You have fire, he grunts, yanking me to my feet. The sudden motion knocks my goblet over, spilling red wine across the white tablecloth like blood. I like fire. Volfric is a horde dragon. He keeps the gold in the dark. But I think you need a real taste of the wild. He pulls me toward him, dragging me away from the safety of the table, aiming for the shadowed alcove behind the dais. Let go of me, I command, struggling against his grip. But he is immovable. He is a wall of muscle and bad intentions. Quiet, he hisses, leering down at me. One taste. The Jarl won't even know. I take what I want, girl. That is the law of the road. Panic flares in my chest, hot and white. But I do not scream. I do not beg. I am done begging monsters not to hurt me. My free hand scrabbles blindly across the table. My fingers close around the cold bone handle of the heavy carving knife. I don't think. I react. I whip the blade up, slamming the point of the serrated steel against the gap in his armour, right where the breastplate meets the gut. I press hard enough to draw a bead of blood. Haldor freezes. He looks down at the knife, then up at my face, genuine shock widening his eyes. Touch me, I hiss, my voice trembling not with fear, but with a feral, protective rage. Touch me one more time, and the warlord will mount your head on the wall next to Gorgash. The commotion has drawn attention. The music stutters and dies. The roar of conversation fades into a suffocating silence. 500 heads turn toward the high table. Haldor looks around, realizing he is the center of attention. His face flushes a dark, angry purple. He opens his mouth to speak, to laugh it off, to crush my hand. But then, the temperature in the room drops 10 degrees. Haldor's eyes shift past me, to the archway of the hall. The colour drains from his face. I don't need to turn around to know who is standing there. I can feel the wave of lethal, suffocating dominance rolling off him like heat from a volcano.
Chapter 22. Volfric. The Great Hall is a cavern of suffocating tension. The air is thick with the smell of roasted meat, spilled ale, and the electric ozone of impending slaughter. It feels like the inside of a forge just before the bellows are pumped, hot, heavy, and ready to ignite. Haldor stands in the pit, his chest heaving beneath his gore-stained leather armor. His face is a mask of sneering, desperate defiance. He has just made a fatal move. In a moment of madness, he lunges for the dais, his thick, claw-tipped fingers reaching to tear Catherine from her seat before my hand clamps onto his throat like a mountain-crushing vice. My volcanic steel cleaver is out. The massive slab of dark, etched metal hums in the low light, the edge resting mere millimeters from Haldor's jugular. One twitch of my thumb and the challenger's head will be rolling into the fire pit. You dare! My voice isn't a growl. It is the sound of shifting tectonic plates, a low-frequency vibration that rattles the iron sconces on the walls. You lay hands on my mate? In my hall? Before my gods? Haldor spits, a glob of bloody phlegm hitting the toe of my heavy boot. She is a human curse, warlord. You've brought a plague into the heart of the mountain. I do what the law demands. I purge the weak before they rot the strong. My knuckles turn white around the hilt of the cleaver. The muscles in my massive forearm bunch, the volcanic steel beginning to bite into Haldor's gray skin. A thin line of dark, thick blood wells up, staining the blade. My eyes are no longer gold. They are two pits of sunfire, reflecting a berserker rage that has been building since the moment Ivor touched her in the tower. I see the exact moment I decide to kill him. I don't care about the traditional challenge anymore. I don't care about the throne or the politics of the territory. I am a beast protecting my own, and the beast wants blood. Volfric, hold! The voice is like a whip crack across the room. Hrock steps forward from the shadows of the high table, his ancient scarred face illuminated by the flickering hearth. He doesn't draw a weapon. He doesn't need to. His presence carries the weight of a century of Eisenkeep's history. Get back, Hrock! I hiss, my gaze never leaving Haldor's throat. He attacked her. He broke the peace of the hearth. He dies where he stands. He is a guest! Hrock shouts back, his voice cracking with age but sharp with the authority of the law. He steps between us, placing a steadying, gnarled hand on my tensed bicep. The law of the mountain is absolute, Volfric. Haldor came under a banner of parley. He ate your salt not an hour ago. He is protected by guest right until the sun sets on the third day. He drew a blade! I scream, the sound echoing off the vaulted ceiling like a thunderclap. The protection is void the moment he threatens the Jarl's household. And who shall judge that? Hrock counters, his eyes locking onto mine with a terrifying intensity. If you spill guest blood before the sun sets, you aren't a Jarl executing a traitor. You are a butcher breaking the most sacred vow of our people. Do you want the lowland clans to have an excuse to march on us? Do you want every trade route closed because the warlord of Eisenkeep cannot keep his word to a guest? My chest is heaving, my breath coming in jagged white plumes in the cold air of the hall. I can see the internal war raging within me. I want to end Haldor. I need to. But Hrock's words are a cold bucket of water on my fire. The hall is full of warriors, all of them watching, all of them waiting to see if their leader is a man of his word or a slave to his temper. Haldor sees the hesitation and lets out a wet, mocking chuckle. What's the matter, warlord? Does the human's leash pull too tight? Or are you afraid of what the other chiefs will say when they hear you murdered a guest in his sleep? My roar is so loud it makes the flames in the fire pit jump. I don't kill him, but I don't let him go either. I slam Haldor back against a stone pillar with enough force to crack the rock, the air leaving the challenger's lungs in a violent wheeze. Catherine steps down from the dais, her feet silent on the stone. Her hands are trembling, but as she reaches out to touch my arm, a flash of the sight flares briefly. A vision of Eisenkeep under siege, the gates shattered and the halls running with blood because of a single impulsive act of vengeance. Volfric, she whispers, her voice small but steady in the sudden dead silence of the hall. Don't. Not like this. Let the law protect him today so that you can destroy him tomorrow. Don't give them the excuse to call you a coward. I stiffen under her touch. For a long, agonizing heartbeat, I think I'm going to ignore her and finish it anyway. Then, with a sound of pure, frustrated fury, I wrench the blade away from Haldor's neck. I don't sheath it. I swing the massive cleaver downward, slamming the point of the volcanic steel into the stone floor between Haldor's feet. The impact sends a spiderweb of cracks through the masonry. Guessed right, I spit, the words like hemlock. I look at Hrock, my eyes promising a reckoning. He stays under my roof until the sun sets tomorrow. He eats my salt. He drinks my ale. He sleeps in my kennels like the dog he is. I lean in close to Haldor, my silver-capped tusks inches from his face. The smell of my rage, ozone, and hot iron is thick enough to choke on. But the moment that sun dips below the western ridge tomorrow evening, Haldor, There is no law in Protheka, no God in the mountain, and no mercy in my soul that will save you from what I am going to do to you. I will not just kill you. I will erase you. I turn my back on the challenger, the ultimate insult, showing I no longer consider him a threat, and scoop Catherine up in my arms. I don't wait for a response. I stride toward the private stairs, my grip on her so tight it is almost painful, my heart thundering against her back. The hall remains silent, but as we ascend, she looks back over my shoulder. Haldor is rubbing his throat, his eyes fixed on us with a look of pure, unadulterated venom. The law has saved his life tonight, but it has only ensured that tomorrow's blood will be shed with even more brutality.
Chapter 23. Catherine. The walk back to the tower feels like a funeral march. The festivities in the Great Hall died the moment the challenge was spoken. Now the keep is silent, save for the whisper of fear running through the corridors. Wulfric opens the heavy iron door of the tower and ushers me inside. He closes it behind us, sliding the deadbolt home with a finality that sounds like a tomb ceiling. He doesn't look at me. Instead, he walks to the narrow window and stares out at the courtyard below. I watch his broad back, the tension locked tight in his shoulders. I can see his hands gripping the cold stone of the sill until his knuckles turn white. I know what he's looking at. In the torchlight below, the servants are already raking the snow, drawing the great circle of ash for the morning slaughter. "Wulfric," I whisper. "He is fast," Wulfric says, his voice flat, stripped of all its usual arrogance. He has spent 20 years in the fighting pits of the south. He kills for coin, Catherine. He is a better duelist than I am. He turns to face me. I am standing by the hearth, the firelight casting long shadows across his face, revealing a raw vulnerability. "There is a very real chance I will not see the sun set tomorrow," he admits. "Don't say that," I choke out, taking a step toward him. "Listen to me," he snaps, crossing the room to grip my shoulders. "If I fall, if he kills me, you cannot stay. Skadi has his orders. He will take you through the lower steam vents to the valley pass. You must run. You must not look back. If Haldor takes you—" He cannot finish the sentence. He looks as though he might be sick, tormented by the mere thought of that monster claiming me. "I won't leave you," I sob, gripping his forearms. "You will live," he commands, his voice cracking. That is the only victory I care about. I look up at him, tears streaming down my face, and the last of my resistance drains away. "Then make me forget," I whisper fiercely. "Make me forget that the sun is coming up." Something inside him seems to break. I watch the fear of death vanish from his eyes, replaced by a sudden, overwhelming hunger. He doesn't say a word. He sweeps me up into his arms, crushing me against his chest. As he carries me to the firs, he doesn't hold me like a warlord claiming a prize, but like a starving man clinging to the only thing that matters in the world. Wulfric carries me to the centre of the massive bed, like I weigh nothing, his arms iron bands around my ribs. The firs are still warm from earlier, but the air between us crackles with something darker. Desperation, possession, the edge of goodbye. He sets me on my knees, then steps back just far enough to strip off his belt. The leather whispers as he doubles it, testing the snap against his palm.
Sorry for the interruption. I know you were gearing up for a steamy scene, but it's way too hot for this platform.
If we want to keep sharing our stories for free, we have to abide by this platform's guidelines.
To get the full, unabridged audiobook, go to worldsofprotheka.com.
Browse through unabridged audiobooks, countless ebooks and bundles offered at a discount.
If the thought of me whispering all the dirty details into your ear isn't enticing enough, use discount code YouTube30 to get 30% off of all digital products.
Story after story, audiobook after audiobook, the Worlds of Protheka are waiting for you.
Protheka's magic is eternal.
But unabridged, it's unforgettable. Mine, he murmurs into my hair, voice wrecked. No matter what dawn brings. Mine. I bury my face in his neck, still shaking, still purring softly. Yours, master. Always. The fear is gone for now. There's only him. Only us. And the long night still ahead.
Chapter 24. Volfric. The circle of ash is a dead space. It is a ring of grey soot, 20 paces wide, drawn in the pristine white snow of the courtyard. It is an ancient law of the mountain. To step outside of it is to forfeit. To die inside of it is the only way to leave with honor. I stand at the southern edge, stripped to the waist. The freezing wind bites at my skin, carrying the metallic scent of impending violence, but I do not feel the cold. I feel only the heavy, rhythmic thud of my heart against my ribs, a war drum counting down my final moments. 500 orcs line the battlements and the courtyard walls, their breath rising in thick plumes of white vapor. Usually, a challenge is a riot of noise, bets being screamed, shields being bashed, bloodlust boiling over. Today, the keep is deathly silent. They know what is at risk. They know that if I fall, the mountain falls with me, and the brutal traditions of the deep south will consume us all. I grip the leather-wrapped haft of the great cleaver. The volcanic steel is heavy, a familiar anchor in a world that is spinning out of control. It has served me through 100 battles, but today, its weight feels ominous. I allow myself one weakness. I look up. High above the courtyard on the stone balcony of the tower, Catherine stands. She is wrapped in the white snowstalker pelt I draped over her shoulders only hours ago. Her face is pale as the surrounding frost, her knuckles white where she grips the iron railing. She looks small, fragile. The wind whips her dark hair around her face, and even from this distance I can see the terror in her eyes. I want to scream at her to run. I want to tell her that the vents are open, that Scardy is waiting in the shadows. But I cannot. To speak it now would be to condemn her early. I tear my gaze away. I turn my back on my heart to face my death. Haldor steps into the circle from the north. His mercenary company cheers, a raucous, ugly sound that cuts through the silence like a saw through bone. Haldor strips off his heavy plate, tossing it into the snow, revealing a torso that is a tapestry of violence. He is covered in scars, acid burns from the southern wastes, jagged lash marks from the fighting pits, and the white, puckered lines of 100 knife fights. His muscles are corded and lean, built for speed rather than the brute power we prize in the north. He does not carry a shield. He draws 2 curved scimitars, the blades light and wicked, flashing like quicksilver in the weak dawn light. They are assassins' weapons. "One chance, brother!" Haldor calls out, rolling his neck with a sickening crack. "Yield the girl! Keep the castle! Come and take her!" I growl. Haldor grins, flashing yellow teeth. "I intend to." He moves. He is fast, terrifyingly fast. There is no honor in his stride, only the predatory scuttle of a pit dog. I swing the great cleaver, a blow that would shatter a shield wall and cleave a man in 2. But Haldor isn't there. He flows like water around a stone, ducking under the whistling arc of my blade. As he spins past, his scimitar flicks out like a viper's tongue. A line of fire erupts on my ribs. I roar, reversing the momentum of the heavy cleaver for a backswing that showers the air with kicked-up snow. Haldor dances back, just out of range, the tip of my blade missing his gut by a hair's breadth. He laughs, a sharp, barking sound. "Too slow, Jarl," he taunts, circling me with light, dancing steps. "The desk has made you heavy. You fight like a blind bear." I charge him. I turn the duel into a brawl, using my superior size to close the distance. I swing, chop, and thrust, driving him back toward the ash line. I want to corner him, to force him to take the weight of my steel. But every time I commit to a strike, He deflects it with a ringing clash of steel, redirecting my momentum and countering with a stinging cut. My arms are bleeding. My chest is slick with red, the warm blood freezing as it drips onto the snow beneath my boots. I am fighting a ghost. He is picking me apart, bleeding me dry by inches. He does not want to overpower me. He wants me to drown in my own exhaustion. Haldor realizes I am shifting to fight defensively, protecting my vitals, waiting for him to overextend and tire. He stops dancing. He steps directly into my guard, parrying a heavy overhead strike by crossing his blades and catching my cleaver in the V of his steel. For a second, we are locked face to face, our muscles trembling with the massive strain. I can smell the sour sweat on him, the stale wine on his breath. "She is watching," Haldor whispers, his breath hot and foul in my face. "Do you think she likes seeing her master bleed?" I shove him back, resetting my stance, my chest heaving for air. "She's going to scream so loud when I take her," Haldor hisses, circling to my left, his eyes alight with sadistic pleasure. "Not like she does for you, Wulfric. No, when I drag her to my tent, when I cut those furs off her, she will beg me to stop, and I won't." Red. The world washes out in a tide of absolute blinding crimson. The discipline of the warlord shatters. The memory of her body against mine just hours ago, the softness of her skin, the thought of this filth touching her, it incinerates my reason. It burns away my training. "I will kill you!" I roar. I abandon my defense. I embrace the berserker. I lunge forward, raising the cleaver high for a blow that contains every ounce of my rage, my fear, my absolute devotion to the woman in the tower. I leave my chest open. I leave my guard down. I commit everything to a single, skull-crushing strike that will end this. It is exactly what he wanted. Haldor doesn't block. He drops to one knee, his boots sliding through the slushy snow, passing completely under my guard. His right scimitar flashes out in a vicious, hamstringing arc. The blade bites deep into the back of my right thigh. It slices through muscle and sinew. I feel the thick tendon snap like a cut rope, a vibration of absolute agony that travels up into my spine. My leg gives out instantly. The momentum of my own massive swing carries me forward, and I crash into the snow on my hands and knees. The pain is a white-hot spike driving into my brain, blinding me, stealing the breath from my lungs. I try to stand. I roar in defiance, but my leg will not hold me. The limb is dead, useless. I collapse back into the blood-soaked slush. A heavy boot slams into my wrist, grinding my bones against the frozen earth. The great cleaver flies from my numb fingers, sliding across the ice out of reach. I look up. Haldor looms over me, blotting out the pale morning sun. He is grinning, his chest heaving with the exertion. He raises both scimitars, crossing them like shears over my throat. "Goodbye, brother," he pants. I look at the cold steel. I do not think of my gods or my keep, or the honor of my ancestors. I think of the tower. I think of the vents. Run, little cat. Run.
Chapter 25. Catherine. The silence of the courtyard is heavier than the stone walls of the keep. 500 orcs are holding their breath, a collective suspension of life that presses painfully against my eardrums. There are no cheers, no jeers, no clashing of shields. Just the hollow, whistling sound of the wind cutting through the battlements, carrying with it the bitter scent of ozone and spilled blood. Below me, in the circle of ash, my world has collapsed. Wulfric is on his knees in the slush. His massive frame, usually so upright, so indomitable, is hunched over like a broken monument. Blood paints the snow beneath him, a stark, terrifying red against the pristine white. His great cleaver, the weapon that has defended this mountain for decades, lies 10 feet away, utterly useless. He is not trying to stand. The angle of his leg is wrong, his powerful thigh completely dead. He is just waiting. I grip the frozen stone railing of the balcony until my fingernails crack and bleed, but I don't feel the pain. I cannot breathe. My lungs are locked in a spasm of pure, absolute terror. "Run, little cat," he had told me. I can feel the pull of the open steam vents behind me, the path to safety Skadi holds open, but my feet are rooted to the stone. I cannot abandon him. This isn't how the story ends. The monster doesn't die. The warlord doesn't fall. Haldor stands over him. The mercenary is not in a hurry. He is savouring the moment, feeding on the despair of the clan like a starving beast. He circles Wulfric slowly, spinning his curved scimitars in his hands. The blades catch the weak winter sun, flashing like deadly jewellery. He plays to the crowd, grinning up at the silent, stone-faced soldiers on the wall, inviting them to watch the end of an era. He wants them to see their god bleed out like a butchered stag. He steps closer, his long shadow falling over Wulfric's bowed back. "Look up, brother!" I hear Haldor's voice drift up on the wind, thin and cruel, devoid of any warrior's honour. "Look at her one last time." Wulfric doesn't move. He keeps his head bowed, his shoulders heaving with the effort to breathe, refusing to give the sadist the satisfaction of his grief. Haldor shrugs, his grin widening. He shifts his weight, planting his boots firmly in the slush for the execution stroke. He raises the twin blades high, crossing them like shears. My scream dies in my throat. I squeeze my eyes shut. I cannot watch the steel come down. I cannot watch him die. Look, the voice in my head is not my own. It is cold, ancient, and imperative. It is the voice that whispered in the tower, the voice that showed me the coup. Look, my eyes snap open, but I do not see the courtyard as it is. The world tilts, the colour drains away, leaving everything in shades of sharp, high-contrast grey. The sound of the wind vanishes instantly, replaced by a high-pitched ringing. The beat of my heart stops. Time becomes a thick, viscous fluid, slowing to a crawl. In the air between the tower and the courtyard, individual snowflakes hang suspended, frozen like stars. My vision does not widen, it narrows. It zooms in with a terrifying supernatural clarity, bypassing the blood, the snow, the suspended blades, and the faces of the crowd. It focuses entirely on Haldor's right leg. I see the heavy leather of his boot. I see the stitching, worn and frayed from southern travel. I see the coarse fur cuff turned down at the calf. And I see the glint. Tucked inside the boot, hidden from the view of the circle but exposed to the angle of the tower, is a third hilt. It is small, wrapped in black leather, inconspicuous. Haldor's left hand drifts down. In the agonizing slow motion of my vision, I see his fingers brush the hilt. He isn't just going to execute Wulfric with the scimitars. He is preparing a failsafe. If Wulfric tries a desperate final lunge, Haldor intends to kick him or stab him in the clinch. My sight pushes deeper, stripping away the leather of the sheath. I see the blade itself nestled inside the boot. It is coated in a thick, gel-like substance. It glistens with a sickly, iridescent green sheen that seems to pulse with its own malevolent light. The knowledge hits me instantly, downloaded into my brain by the sight like a strike of lightning. Rot venom. It is a coward's killer. A single scratch causes the blood to curdle instantly, boiling in the veins while the flesh blackens and dies. It is a slow, agonizing death that no healer can reverse, meant for assassinations in the dark, not the sacred circle of ash. It is illegal in every duel, in every clan, in every land of the north. The honourable duellist is a cheat. The shock snaps the magical paralysis that held me. The grey world shatters, colour rushing back in a violent, dizzying flood. The sound of the wind returns to a roar, crashing over my senses. Haldor's muscles tense. He is beginning the downward swing. I do not think. I do not hesitate. I lean over the balcony railing, half of my body hanging out over the 80-foot drop. I fill my lungs with the freezing air, drawing from the very bottom of my stomach, and I scream. I scream with the authority of the seer, with the absolute feral rage of a mate protecting her own. Poison! The word rips through the silence like a thunderclap. Haldor flinches. His head jerks up, his eyes widening in sudden panic. The boot! I scream, my throat tearing with the force of it, pointing a shaking finger directly at the mercenary. He has a dagger in his boot. It's poisoned. My voice echoes off the stone walls, inescapable and absolute. The reaction is instantaneous. Every single eye in the courtyard, from the lowest servant to the highest captain on the wall, shifts instantly from the executioner's blades to his right leg. A collective gasp sucks the air out of the keep. Haldor freezes. His hand, which had been drifting toward the hidden hilt, stops in mid-air, caught in the act. His face drains of colour. Below him, Wulfric lifts his head. Earth is pretty much a desolate wasteland since the orcs came over from Protheka, and being a woman, the best you can hope is to be someone's property. Now, after my curvy body catches Korthar's eye, he'll claim me, and I'll serve him, in any way he pleases.
You're mine now. Listen to this story and more when you get the complete Orc Warriors of Protheka audiobook and ebook bundle.
40 books, 19 audiobooks, 19 ebooks. You even get 1 free novella and 1 free audiobook.
All for a shocking 90% off.
Protheka's magic is eternal, and the complete Orc Warriors of Protheka bundle will bring over 100 hours of that magic to you.
Chapter 26. Wulfric. The pain in my leg is a living thing. It screams with a white-hot intensity that drowns out the howling wind, the biting cold, and the nervous murmurs of the crowd. The severed tendon throbs, sending waves of blinding agony up my spine. I'm on my knees, my bare hands resting in the freezing, blood-soaked slush. I lower my head, waiting for the dark. I see the shadow of the crossed scimitars raised above me, cutting through the pale winter light. I brace my neck for the bite of the steel. I do not pray to the ancestors. I simply hope that Scardy has already opened the lower vents, and that my little cat is already running. Then, a voice cuts through the haze of my impending death like a clarion bell. Poison! It is a scream of pure, terrifying authority. It is not the cry of a frightened human girl. It is the command of a matriarch. It echoes off the stone walls, piercing the heavy silence of the keep. The boot! He has a poisoned dagger! Any other warlord might have hesitated. Any other male might have wasted a precious second looking up at the balcony in confusion, or looking down at the mercenary's boot to verify the impossible claim. I do not. I know that voice. I trust the seer. I snap my heavy head up, locking eyes with Haldor. I see it instantly, the flicker of absolute panic, the sudden, jerky shift of his gaze downward. The arrogant veneer of the gladiator vanishes, replaced by the desperate, cornered fear of a cheat exposed before the gods. Haldor knows the theater of the execution is ruined. He snarls, abandoning the scimitars. His right hand drops from the hilt of his sword, diving toward the fur cuff of his boot to draw the hidden blade and end this before the stunned crowd can intervene. He is fast, but he is reacting to fear. I am reacting to rage. I cannot stand. My right leg is dead meat, so I use the only weapon I have left, my sheer, unstoppable weight. I roar, a sound that tears my throat, throwing my massive upper body forward. I do not try to dodge. I launch myself into his space, driving my shoulder into his midsection like a battering ram. We crash into the slush. The impact knocks the wind out of him with a wet, heavy thud. The scimitars fly from his hands, clattering uselessly across the ice. It is no longer a duel. It is a brawl in the mud. Haldor thrashes beneath me, spitting curses, his boots kicking for purchase in the snow. He is desperate. His hand is still scrabbling at his boot. He rips the hidden weapon free, a wicked black-handled dagger. I see the glint. Even in the chaos of the struggle, the viscous green sheen on the blade is unmistakable. Wrought venom. The sight of it turns my blood to magma. It is an abomination. To use it in the circle of ash is to spit on the ancestors. He didn't just want to kill me. He wanted me to rot in agony while he took my mate. Haldor raises the dagger to plunge it into my ribs. My armored gauntlet shoots out. I catch his wrist in midair. The steel of my glove grinds against his bones. Haldor screams, using both hands to try and drive the poison tip down into my exposed chest. He is fighting for his life, his face contorted in terror. The tip of the blade hovers an inch from my pectoral muscle, dripping green death. "You brought death to my circle," I growl, leaning my full, crushing weight onto his arm. I look into his eyes and I see the exact moment he realizes he has lost. "You have no honor, brother." I squeeze. There is a sickening crack, loud as a breaking branch, as the bones of his wrist give way beneath my gauntlet. Haldor's grip fails. The dagger drops onto his chest. I snatch it up. I hold the green-tipped blade inches from his face, letting him smell his own treachery, letting him look at his own demise. "Drink it," I snarl. I drive the blade down. I bury the dagger to the hilt in the side of his neck. Haldor's eyes bulge. He gurgles, his hands clawing weakly at my broad shoulders. The venom enters his bloodstream instantly, mixing with the arterial spray. The poison is so potent his body goes rigid within a heartbeat, veins turning black beneath his skin, before he slumps back into the red slush, dead. I push the corpse off me. I struggle to an upright kneel, my chest heaving, my breath clouding the freezing air in ragged gasps. I rip the dagger from his neck and hold it high, turning the poisoned blade so it catches the morning light for all to see. "Poison!" I roar, my voice echoing off the battlements with absolute triumph. "The coward cheated!" A wave of shock ripples through the courtyard. The elders lean dangerously over the walls. The soldiers gasp, their faces twisting in disgust. The Iron Company mercenaries standing near the circle look at the green slime on the blade. They look at their dead captain lying in the mud. Then, one by one, they drop their weapons into the snow. They fall to their knees, bowing their heads in total shame. They will not fight for a corpse without honor. The mountain is secure. The silence returns, but it is different now. It is the silence of absolute awe. I do not look toward the mercenaries. Do not look at my clan. I turn my head slowly toward the tower. Catherine is leaning over the railing, her hair wild in the wind, her chest heaving. She is staring down at me, her eyes wide, tears freezing on her cheeks. I raise my bloodied fist to her. She didn't just warm my bed. She didn't just see the future. She saved the mountain. And by the gods, she is mine.
Chapter 27. Catherine. I stand in the room, my entire body shaking so violently my teeth chatter. The freezing air from the open balcony still bites at my skin, but I can't feel the cold. I can't feel anything except the wild, frantic beating of my heart and the metallic taste of terror in the back of my throat. Heavy footsteps echo up the stone stairs. Deep voices. Skadi, grunting under a massive weight. The heavy iron door swings open. Wulfric fills the threshold. He is a ruin of blood, mud, and freezing slush. His right leg is bound with a dark, soaked strip of linen, dragging uselessly beneath him. But he is breathing. His broad chest heaves, and his eyes are open, burning with a ferocious golden light. "Get off me!" he growls, shoving his second-in-command away, catching himself heavily against the stone doorframe. Skadi hesitates, his eyes fixed on Wulfric's mangled thigh. "Jarl, the healers are coming. You need—" "I need no one," Wulfric snarls, the sound rattling the stones. "Guard the stairwell. Let no one pass until I open this door." Skadi nods and retreats. The door slams shut. The deadbolt slides home with a heavy, final thud. We are alone. Wulfric turns to face me. I don't run to him. I can't move. My feet are rooted to the floor. He looks at me, and I see the warlord strip away, leaving only the starving, desperate male whose life I just saved. "Because of you," he rasps. He limps toward me. "You're alive," I whisper. "I saw the green. I saw the death." He reaches me. He grabs my face with his blood-stained hands, smearing the gore of his enemy across my cheeks. "You saved me." Then his mouth crashes onto mine. His kiss is violence and victory and raw, bleeding need. Blood and ash smear between our lips, but I don't care. I claw at his shoulders, tasting copper and salt, and him, alive, whole enough to claim me. He breaks the kiss only to growl against my mouth. "On your knees, little cat. Now."
As much as Samara and I want to finish what these two characters have started, it looks like this chapter is about to get too hot for this platform to handle.
Unfortunately, we have to pause here because their guidelines won't allow us to reveal the spiciest details.
To keep bringing you these free audiobooks, we have to follow their rules.
But don't worry. You can experience the full, unabridged version over at worldsofprotheka.com, where the boundaries of passion and fantasy collide.
Use code YouTube30 for 30% off any of our unabridged audiobooks set in the rich and immersive worlds of Protheka.
Protheka's magic is eternal.
With these scenes, it will be unforgettable.
"Now," he murmurs, voice hoarse with something deeper than lust. "You are a queen." I smile through the mess, through the ache, through everything. I'm his queen, forever.
Chapter 28. Wulfric. The ice has finally broken. For 3 long, brutal months, the mountain held its breath, locked in the teeth of the longest winter in living memory. But today the wind blowing through the open iron-bound doors of the great hall smells of wet earth, crushed pine needles, and the faint, sweet scent of thawing rivers. The glaciers are weeping into the valley below. Spring has come to Icenkeep, and with it, a rebirth I never thought I would live to see. I stand at the edge of the dais, my hands resting on a new, lighter sword. The great hall is packed to the rafters, the air thick with the heat of hundreds of bodies. Clan Ison stands shoulder to shoulder with the soldiers of the Iron Company. The mercenaries who once came to kill me now wear my colors, their black armor draped with the gray wolf pelts of the north. They have learned that a warlord who fights for his own, who bleeds in the mud for his territory, is worth more than a southern king's pouch of gold. I shift my weight, wincing slightly as a dull, heavy ache throbs in my right leg. The wound from the duel has healed, leaving a jagged, ropey scar of dead nerve and knotted muscle that runs from the back of my knee to my hip. I will walk with a limp for the rest of my days. I will never be the fastest in the sparring ring again. In the brutal politics of the orc clans, a jarl who limps is usually a jarl whose days are numbered. Sharks smell blood, but not here. Not anymore. I rub the scar through my heavy leathers. It is a small price. I would have given the leg entirely. I would have given the arm, the eye, the heart. The limp is a monument to what I gained. The great drums at the back of the hall begin a slow, rhythmic pounding that vibrates up through the soles of my boots. Boom, boom, boom. The boisterous conversation in the hall dies instantly. 500 heads turn toward the heavy timber doors. I remember the day I brought her here. I remember dragging a shivering, terrified human creature in rags through these very doors, a heavy chain wrapped around her delicate wrist. I remember looking at her and seeing a pet, a possession, a fleeting, fragile warmth for a cold bed. I was a fool who did not know he was bringing his own salvation into the keep. The doors groan open. Skadi and Hrock stand on either side, dressed in their finest ceremonial armor, their tusks capped in silver. They step aside, bowing low, lower than they have ever bowed for me. She enters. She is not wearing rags. She is not wearing the ill-fitting, heavy pelts of the winter. She wears a gown of white deer leather, tailored to fit the changing, softer curves of her body, like a second skin. A cloak of rare silver fox fur flows from her shoulders, shimmering like moonlight in the torchlight. Her dark hair is braided with silver wire and moonstones, leaving her face bare and proud. She walks with her head high. She does not flinch at the hundreds of eyes watching her, or the wall of armed monsters she must pass through. She meets their gaze with the cool, gray assessment of a storm front. There is a terrifying stillness to her now, an aura of quiet power that makes even the largest battle-scarred veterans step back to clear her path. "Queen Catherine," a whisper runs through the crowd. "The White Wolf." It is the name the soldiers have given her, the creature that survived the winter, the seer who saw the unseen and broke a poisoner with her voice alone. She ascends the dais. The limp in my step vanishes as I move to meet her. I take her hand. It is warm, small, and infinitely strong in mine. I turn to face my people. "Brothers," I rumble. My voice does not need to be raised. It carries to the rafters, silencing even the wind outside. "Sisters, warriors of the Iron Keep." I look down at Catherine. For generations, we have ruled this mountain by the old code. Strength, steel, blood. I pause, letting the heavy words settle over the hall. But steel can break. Blood can spill. It was not steel that saved this mountain when the traitor came. It was not my strength that spared your lives from a false king. It was vision. I signal to Scardy. He steps forward, holding a crimson velvet cushion. On it rests a circlet forged from the same dark volcanic steel as my great cleaver, set with a single, flawless diamond that captures the firelight like a captured star. I lift the crown. It is heavy, but she does not bend as I place it on her brow. "I am the warlord," I declare, my voice shaking the dust from the ancient banners overhead. "I command the armies. I guard the walls. But she—" I place my large hand on her shoulder. "She is the matriarch. She is the law of the spirit. Her voice is my voice. Her word is the absolute will of the mountain. Anyone who defies her defies the gods." I look out at the sea of faces, daring a single one of them to object. "Hail, Queen Catherine!" I roar. "Hail the White Wolf of Ison!" The roar that comes back is deafening. Spears slam against shields in a thunderous wave. Feet stomp the stone floor until the keep shakes. It is a sound of absolute, fanatical acceptance. Catherine looks up at me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She squeezes my hand, grounding me. But the ceremony is not over. I release her hand. And there, in front of my generals, in front of the hardened mercenaries, in front of the entire gathered might of the North, I do the unthinkable. I step back. I lower my heavy frame. I drop to one knee before her. A collective hush falls over the hall. It is so quiet I can hear the torches crackle. An apex predator does not kneel. A warlord does not submit. But I'm not submitting to a master. I'm devoting myself to my heart. I wrap my large arms around her waist, pressing my face against the white leather of her gown. I close my eyes, shutting out the hall, the clan, the world, and I listen. There, beneath the steady, rhythmic thump-thump of her own heart, is a second sound. It is faint, rapid, and fiercely stubborn. A tiny, fluttering wing beat against the dark. The air. A daughter, the seer tells me. A daughter with my strength and her mother's sight, who will one day rule this entire territory. I press a kiss to the curve of her stomach, inhaling the scent of her, snowdrops, milk, and life. "My queen," I whisper against her skin, low enough that only she can hear. "My wolf." She rests her hand on my head, her fingers tangling in my hair, anchoring me as she has anchored the whole clan. "My monster," she whispers back. I look up at her, and the golden fire in my eyes is no longer a burning, destructive rage. It is the steady, eternal warmth of a hearth fire. I have conquered the valley. I have defeated my enemies. I have secured the mountain for another generation. But here, on my knees before the woman who saved me, I found the only victory that matters. The monster has found his peace,